Chapter 925. It's this thing, what do you want? Casually flipping through the stack of information in front of him, Jiang Hai's heart was in turmoil. Louis Quezada was obviously more sincere than Terry Boggs. Although the information he brought was also incomplete. For example, some important places were missing. These dozens of pages of the report were quite sincere. And it was the most important photo page. Jiang Hai saw a wall, and the badge on the wall was his dragon-shaped badge. At this point, he was also sure that this thing was indeed related to his dragon-shaped badge. But on the surface, he still had to suppress it. His secret could not be told to anyone. I want to know, why are you looking for this place? Louis Quezada looked at Jiang Hai and said seriously, take it back. But after hearing his words, Jiang Hai directly threw the report back. He was not a person who was good at lying. So since he did not want to lie, and he could not tell them about this matter, then he would just not say it. Hey, Mr. Jiang, we have already shown our sincerity. You are making it very difficult for us. Looking at Jiang Hai, Louis Quezada said helplessly. He had long known that Jiang Hai was difficult to deal with, but he did not expect it to be this difficult. Whether it's difficult for you or not has nothing to do with me. There are some things that I can say if I want to say it. And if I don't want to say it, I won't say it. It's that simple. I have already told you what I can say. Looking at Louis Quezada in front of him, Jiang Hai said with a serious face, if you want money, just tell me how much you want. Manors, pastures, and fisheries. Why do I need these things? I won't compromise on these things. This is also my bottom line. Other than money, I have nothing else to give you. Looking at Louis Quezada in front of him, Jiang Hai said very seriously. He knew that he was telling the truth now. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Louis Quezada also took a deep breath. This Jiang Hai is really stubborn. But it didn't matter. He had already figured this out before he came. If Jiang Hai didn't say anything, wouldn't he look for it himself? Okay, I'll charge you $10 million for this information, but I have a request. After you get this information, do you want to go to Antarctica to find this underground city? Louis Quezada looked at Jiang Hai and said with a serious face, of course. It was impossible for Jiang Hai to leave the United States quietly. There was no need for him to do so, since these people already paid attention to Jiang Hai. Then if Jiang Hai wanted to go to this place, then they would definitely know about it. If that's the case, our request is that we send someone with you when you go, or in other words, to supervise you. If you agree, we'll give you $10 million to take this thing away. Looking at Jiang Hai, Louis Quezada looked at him and said seriously. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai couldn't help but hesitate. He didn't know if this underground city really had information about himself or the Dragon Balls. If it did, he would be in trouble if the United States government found out. Therefore, he was a little hesitant. But at this time, he saw Azalina quietly gesturing to him. Seeing her gesture, Jiang Hai also understood what was going on. I can send someone, but what about the number of people? Obviously, in a place like this, whoever had more people would have the upper hand. However, Jiang Hai was not an ordinary person. It would not be easy for these guys to find trouble with him. If the number of people could be controlled, it would not be impossible. But if the negotiations broke down now, it would not be easy for Jiang Hai to obtain this information. The number of people is up to you, but it can't be less than 5 people. Louis Quezada also saw Jiang Hai's actions, and saw the looks that Jiang Hai and Azalina gave him. But he didn't care. Just like what Jiang Hai originally thought, as long as Jiang Hai pays his taxes on time, he will be able to generate billions, or even billions of tax revenue for the US government. This is not a joke, this is real gold and silver. It's just a slap in the face. Although there were many people like Jiang Hai in the United States was quite fond of people like him. Therefore, if it was confirmed that Jiang Hai was just curious, or that he was not a threat to the United States government, it would not matter if he went to take a look. Just like what Louis Quezada said, they were only supervising. Of course, if they discovered any great secrets, or if Jiang Hai had any intention of rebelling, they also believed that they could get rid of Jiang Hai. 5 agents were enough to protect themselves, not to mention anything else. Sure, we have about 6 or 7 people on our side. How about this 1-to-1? If we have 6 people on our side, you have to provide 6. If it's 7, you have to provide 7. I really just want to go and take a look. Hearing Louis Quezada's words, Jiang Hai also took a step back. As long as he could go in and take a look, Jiang Hai didn't care how many people followed him in. After all, there were some places that no one else could go except for him. Don't forget that not everyone could breathe underwater. And ignore the water pressure. In the water, Jiang Hai was like a flood dragon. Even a submarine might not be able to beat him. Okay, the best time to enter Antarctica is from December to February every year. When are you planning to go? Looking at Jiang Hai, Louis Quezada also gently patted his leg and said, for him, 5 agents was the minimum. The more the better. Now that Jiang Hai took the initiative to take a step back, indicating that he had no ambition, there was no possibility of him not accepting. I'm going back to China for the new year, and I'm just going to take a look. I don't have any intention of doing research or anything like that. So early February, when I come back from China, I will inform you. After thinking about it, Jiang Hai originally thought that he would have a year to look for information and go next year. But now this opportunity was in front of him. He couldn't refuse, so after thinking about it, he decided that he could go after he was done with his business in China. Okay, I'll wait for your call. This is all the information. If you want to go to Antarctica, you must pass by the Antarctic Research Station. I don't want to see you there. Seeing that Jiang Hai had agreed, Louis Quezada took out all the information from his bag and placed it in front of Jiang Hai. Of course, the last sentence was to remind Jiang Hai not to sneak away. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai smiled. He didn't mean to go alone. After Huali Shelley took the documents, Louis Quezada also left. This time he didn't play any tricks. After he left, Huali Shelley and Azalina first looked around for bugs. After confirming that there were no bugs, they sat on either side of Jiang Hai and looked at the information they got from Louis Quezada. This information was not much different from the unofficial history outside, but it was much more detailed. The main reason was to find the occupied Aryan city, because it was the Soviet Union that attacked Berlin. The Soviet Union claimed that the chancellor really committed suicide and burned himself to death. But as you know, the Americans didn't really believe the Soviets. Therefore, after the end of World War II, based on some clues, the United States Navy sent a huge fleet of 40 ships and aircraft to the South Pole. What happened next was similar to what Jiang Hai knew. A small team accidentally found the entrance to the underground city and was then protected. They didn't know what happened next, because the team that took over was an elite team that went with the ship. According to the information, this elite team did find an underground city that was under construction and took some photos. But the situation at that time was just that. According to the information, the underground city had a lot of mechanisms, but there was no one inside. But there was some information and so on. During World War II, to be honest, America's military technology was not as good as Germany's. There was no need to talk about tanks. Germany's Tiger, Tiger King, and Leopard were the most powerful in Europe. Supersonic aircraft were also developed by Germany. Germany also had automatic rifles, but because the place was too small, they didn't have enough resources. Later on, Germany's research went astray. Originally, they were at the forefront of the research of atomic bombs, but because the front line was too long, they didn't have enough funds and time to research these things. They could only stop the research of atomic bombs and change to researching real weapons, including UFOs, supersonic aircraft, new era weapons, and so on. But unfortunately, they lost before the research was successful. After the Soviet Union rushed into Berlin, relying on the scientific and technological research results obtained from Germany, they became the world's most powerful military country, surpassing Britain, France, and other European countries. They confronted the United States. In the beginning, the United States didn't have the advantage. Even when they went to the moon, it was the Soviet Union who sent the satellite there first. Now the United States became the world's most powerful country because of these materials. Looking at the information, Jiang Hai, Azalina, and Wallace Shelley looked at each other. Jiang Hai didn't care about the research information written on it. He didn't have any interest in it. What did the truth of history have to do with him? What he cared about the most, and it could be said that the only thing he cared about, was the dragon-shaped badge. He just didn't know if the Americans took the secret of the dragon-shaped badge with them when they went to search this place. If they took it, then he would be in trouble. Chapter 926. Jiang, do you really want to cooperate with them? Watching Louis Quezada leave, Wallace Shelley also walked behind Jiang Hai and leaned his head in her arms. While massaging Jiang Hai's head, she said to him with some hesitation, "It doesn't matter if we cooperate with them, but we need to pay attention to some things. This stack of information is for you, be prepared." Hearing Wallace Shelley's words, Jiang Hai naturally didn't want to have any contact with these guys. But just as he said, if they want to go to the South Pole, they must go through the South Pole Research Institute. If they don't know what they are going to do, they can say that they are going to play, or explore, or even directly spend money, and say that they are going to do scientific research. This is what Jiang Hai originally wanted. But the problem now is that they already know that Jiang Hai wants to go to the South Pole, and they have their own purpose. So no matter what, they will not let Jiang Hai enter the South Pole. And if they don't let Jiang Hai go to the South Pole, Jiang Hai really has no other way. As long as he wasn't targeted, he could go anywhere. Jiang Hai could even dive into the water to get there. But the problem now is that he is being targeted, and it is estimated that things are not that simple. It is difficult to not cooperate, so Jiang Hai can only do this. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Wallace Shelley didn't say anything. Since Jiang Hai has already decided, and she really has no other way, she can only do this. Forget it, let's not think about this first. By the way, will you go home with me this year? Looking at Wallace Shelley, Jiang Hai waved his hand at the same time, motioning Azalina to sit in his arms, then asked them. Jiang Hai has already said that he wants these girls to go home with him. It was better to ask first. After hearing Jiang Hai's words, Azalina and Wallace Shelley's eyes lit up. Azalina had followed Jiang Hai to Huaxia, but Wallace Shelley hadn't. Now that she was going to Huaxia, she was a little nervous and excited. She nodded her head like a woodpecker. I want everyone to go there this year. Apart from the bad air, everything else is quite fun. You can play ice slides, see ice lanterns, snow sculptures, and even eat pig dishes. Looking at the two people in front of him, Jiang Hai smiled and started talking. Thinking about the food in his hometown, Jiang Hai was quite interested. Well, we want to go. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Wallace Shelley also nodded seriously. Well, then I will go back in advance and buy a villa. Otherwise, we won't have enough space to live in. Jiang Hai thought for a while, and was already thinking about what kind of villa to buy when he went back. Although Jiang Hai didn't have much money now, he still had hundreds of millions of dollars. Moreover, buying a villa in Bing City didn't cost so much. The housing prices in Bing City were not cheap, especially in the city center, and the two main streets, Gogol Street and Central Street. The Riverview houses in the latter were sold for more than 20,000 yuan per square meter. Some even sold for more than 30,000 or 40,000 yuan. Of course, this was normal. Every city had a special area that was like this. But generally speaking, the housing prices in Bing City were relatively average. After all, Bing City had expanded too much. The surrounding housing prices couldn't be developed, and the prices had been stagnant. Jiang Hai remembered that he had asked Fu Yuan to check it out. One of the villas was located in Jiangbei, near the riverside and the government. The villas were about 300 square meters, and were selling for around 30 million renminbi. 1 square meter was 100,000 renminbi. This was the most expensive price for the commoners in Bing City. It was not like in Jiangsu and Zhejiang, where a villa near Hangzhou's West Lake was sold for at least 1 billion yuan. Compared to the first-tier cities in China, Bing City was still far behind. Not to mention Beijing, Shanghai, Guangdong, Zhejiang, etc. Bing City was also far behind when compared to Chengdu, Wudu, Jinmen, and other cities. Based on the first-tier and second-tier cities in China, Bing City was at most one of the second-tier cities. It was understandable that the housing prices in Bing City were not particularly high. Tens of millions was an astronomical figure for ordinary people, but for Jiang Hai, it was nothing. He didn't lack this money. After making up his mind, Feng Yu decided to go back and tell Qi Jie, Qi Ya, Aphrodite, and the rest that they will go back together for the Lunar New Year. While chatting, Feng Yu enjoyed the soft bodies of the two girls. Unknowingly, it was getting late. Prawalton had also returned. Jiang Hai was still staying at Prawalton's place at night. She was very thirsty for Jiang Hai and wanted to sleep every night. She also wanted to make Jiang Hai part of her body. At most, she could sleep during the meeting during the day. Anyway, she was the same as Jiang Hai. Both of them belonged to the special class. She had the final say on how much she sold Sam's Club for. The Bureau of Commodity Prices in the U.S. had no control over this. For the next few days, Jiang Hai would occasionally go out with Azalina and Wallace during the day. At night, he would basically fight with Prawalton. She would also invite some supermodels over from time to time. She liked them too. Of course, Jiang Hai would not refuse. Feng Yu's battle life changed every day. With the end of Prawalton's summit, Jiang Hai and Prawalton also went to the airport in Washington. But one flew to Boston, and the other flew to Atlantic City. After arriving home, Jiang Hai returned to his original life. He got up in the morning and went out for a walk. He looked at the horses, walked the dogs, and teased the Greenland seal that he had thrown in the swimming pool. Of course, Jiang Hai deliberately added geothermal heat to the swimming pool. This way, the water would not turn to ice in the winter, although it was still very cold. But have you ever thought about the Greenland seal being afraid of the cold? Don't joke around. Then he would come back for breakfast, then for lunch, then for dinner, then back to his room for battle. A fulfilling day was over. As for Jiang Hai's question of taking the girls back to his house, it was naturally approved by all votes. Even Ai Xiaoxi, who had originally planned to go home, was considering whether she should go back in a hurry. After all, in a situation where the whole family was going back, it would not be good if she was not there. It was until Jiang Hai said that they would go back together every year that she decided to go home first. After all, she had told her parents that filial piety was the most important of all virtues. She had not seen her family for some time. Because the Lunar New Year was at the end of January, Jiang Hai could not stay in Winthrop for long. After returning home, he stayed for about a week before returning to Bing City to buy a house. This was the most important thing. And these girls will arrive in Bing City 3 days before the new year. At that time, Jiang Hai will have to prepare all the things for them. If Jiang Hai wanted to go back, Azalina and the rest would surely follow him. But Jiang Hai did not ask them to follow him this time. Although he had quite a reputation in the United States, not many people in the country knew about him. If he brought bodyguards with him, he would attract attention. Moreover, he would not be in any danger if he went back alone. Jiang Hai drove to New York, and then took a plane to Beijing. In Beijing, he had to spend a night with Qi Li and Du Ning. The next day, Jiang Hai took a plane back to Bing City. When he arrived at Bing City, Jiang Hai was used to it. After all, Bing City's airport was far from the city, so the air was not much worse than in the US. As for the temperature, Jiang Hai, who was by the sea, had the sea breeze. When the wind blew, it was much colder than Bing City. Furthermore, Jiang Hai had lived here for a long time and was used to it. After getting off the plane, he put on his thickest clothes, which were made of mountain lion fur. Regarding furs and the like, Jiang Hai didn't have any ideas. He thought that there was nothing wrong with making furs out of animal skins. After all, this was how humans' ancestors lived. Now they were saying that they wanted to protect animals and make artificial fur. Have they ever considered what those people who raised ferrets and rabbits were thinking? Jiang Hai would never do such hypocritical things. He felt that this was quite good. After leaving the airport, Fu Yuan and Su Wei were already waiting for Jiang Hai. Looking at the two's car, Jiang Hai quickened his steps. He carried his backpack and walked quickly to the car. He opened the back door and threw his things inside. He rubbed his hands and got in. "Just you? Where are your wife and the rest?" Seeing Jiang Hai get in, Fu Yuan could not help but ask with some doubts. "They will be back a few days later. I came back to find a place to stay." Otherwise, when they come over, they don't even have a place to stay. That will be awkward. Hearing Fu Yuan's words, Jiang Hai waved his hand. It was rare for him to be free for a few days. Let's go eat first. You should go home first. Looking at Jiang Hai, Su Wei also stretched his head out from the front passenger seat. Let's eat first. It's not like you don't know how bad the food on the plane is. Hearing Su Wei's words, Jiang Hai waved his hand and went to eat first. The food on the plane cough, if he was not really hungry, Jiang Hai, who had been raised to be picky, really couldn't eat. So when he got off the plane, he thought of eating. What do you want to eat? Double fried pork or something? Hearing Jiang Hai's words, the two people here laughed. This foodie Jiang Hai was the guy they were familiar with. Fu Yuan asked Jiang Hai as he started the car. Chapter 927. How did you sleep last night? Did you sleep well without your little sister hugging you? Looking at Jiang Hai going downstairs, Fu Yuan couldn't help but ask with a smile. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai couldn't help but raise his middle finger at him. Of course, their relationship was really strong. It was not something that could be summed up by a middle finger. If they were not good friends, they would not be able to be mean to each other. It's the same even if I hugged my quilt. Stop talking nonsense. Where are we going to eat now? After getting in the car, Jiang Hai said to Fu Yuan, we just ate yesterday. What do you want to eat now? Just order something simple. It will take a lot of time to see the houses. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Fu Yuan couldn't help but smile and said, after picking up Jiang Hai yesterday, the three of them went out for a meal. But it was not Jiang Hai's favorite double-fried pork. Because she knew that Jiang Hai loved double-fried pork, Chia learned the most authentic cooking method when she came back last time. These days, she had been cooking for Jiang Hai when she was free. So Jiang Hai did not lack this dish. Because of this, they didn't go to eat double-cooked pork yesterday. Instead, they went to eat Muslim dishes. This dish was very common in Bing City. There were a lot of religious issues in Bing City. There was no need to talk about religious issues here. But Jiang Hai liked Muslim dishes very much. First, it was because the taste was good. Second, it was because the dishes were very clean. Although it wasn't a religion, it was precisely because they believed in these things that more than 90% of Muslim restaurants, which were really Muslim restaurants, were very particular about the ingredients used when cooking. Beef was beef, mutton was mutton, and there was no gutter oil or anything like that used in oil. Therefore, it was said that it was clean, and it was as much as possible to eat with peace of mind. Of course, it was not clear if there were fake dishes. But the restaurant that Jiang Hai went to was quite reliable. Grilled beef strips, fried tripe. It tasted like honey. And the main dish was steamed dumplings. They did not drink this meal. And it was good. After eating, Jiang Hai went back to his home. Jiang Hai had the keys to two places in Bing City. One was his home, the place where he and his parents used to live. It was sold in the early days, but after he became rich, he bought it back. The other home was his and Chi Li's home. But when he left the key in the house. But a few days ago, his relationship with Chi Li softened a little. Chi Li secretly put the key on his key ring. Jiang Hai find it. It could only be said that Chi Li's way of doing things was really cute. Now Jiang Hai went back to his home. Watching the familiar TV and listening to the familiar commercials, Jiang Hai spent the night at home. The next morning at 9 a.m., Fu Yuan came over. But today, only Feng Yu came. Su Wei had to work today. As mentioned earlier, Su Wei did not have an official job. During the summer, he drove a van to the construction site to fetch workers. But in Bing City, he could only work for half a year. After half a year, he could not work anymore. Therefore, during the winter, he didn't want to hire any more workers this year. Therefore, he found another job delivering packages. Although it was also a tough job, he could do it all year round. Jiang Hai also wanted to help his brothers. After all, it wasn't a problem for him to arrange a few people in the U.S. No matter if it was Chi Li's company, Feng Yu's manor, or his Tunglong company, it was fine. Not to mention that they still knew how to work, he could even support them. However, he had always known that it was impossible to support them purely for free. It was just like how he would not ask them to lend him money when he was in need of money. It was not as natural as taking it for granted. But after Jiang Hai mentioned it, these people did not contact Jiang Hai. Jiang Hai thought for a while and understood. Now they were all friends. No matter how much they earned, Jiang Hai's friends in China were mainly these people. Jiang Hai was an otaku and did not want to make friends with those rich people. So his friends were still these people. But if these people went to Jiang Hai's wife's company, Jiang Hai's company, or Feng Yu's manor, their relationship would change. Maybe they would still be the same, because they were all on the same level. But there would be some estrangement between them and Jiang Hai, because Jiang Hai had become their boss, not their friend. It was precisely because of this that they weren't prepared to seek refuge with Jiang Hai. Of course, if they were still able to survive, then they could just open their mouths and ask Jiang Hai to help them. Jiang Hai would definitely help them. After getting in the car, Jiang Hai and Fu Yuan went to a nearby casserole restaurant to eat casserole. Jiang Hai did not remember if he had introduced casserole before. Casseroles were everywhere, but deep-fried pancakes were rare in some places. Casserole and deep-fried pancakes were a perfect match. The casserole was the soup. There were beef balls, tofu balls, mutton, spinach, vermicelli, etc. This was easy to make, but the deep-fried pancakes were hard to make. A good deep-fried pancake was not so thick. When it was just baked, it had to be crispy on the outside and soft on the inside. It also had to be fragrant. If it was soaked in the soup, the crispy shell on the outside would not soften so quickly. The soft part on the inside must be soaked in the soup and scooped up to eat. The crispy outside and soft inside must have the taste of the soup. Of course, there was another way to eat it. That was to not cut the deep-fried pancakes. Instead, there was a plate of fried or stir-fried shredded potatoes. After eating a few bites of the pancakes and drinking a mouthful of soup, the feeling was quite wonderful. Jiang Hai liked to eat this kind of food. Although he did not like it as much as double-cooked pork, it was still okay. After eating the deep-fried pancakes in the casserole, both of them sat in Fu Yuan's car and drove towards the villa area in Bing City. Huaxia people had liked to live in big houses since ancient times. This was an immutable truth. The bigger the house, the richer and better the life. People nowadays also valued these things. This was also the reason why the housing prices in China were so high. It was ridiculously high. One had to know that with the money to buy a house in Suzhou and Hangzhou, one could already choose to emigrate. It was about 5 million yuan. Regardless of whether it was Shanghai, Jiangxia, Beijing, or anywhere else, with this money to buy a house, invest, or emigrate, they could choose anywhere in the world. Other than some expensive cities like Paris, London, New York, Los Angeles, Tokyo, Seoul, etc., you can choose anywhere else. For example, 5 million renminbi is almost $1 million US. In the United States, if you wanted to build a small farm for $1,000 an acre, it had to be a good place with convenient transportation and close to the city. A 500 square meter villa in the countryside cost $100,000, but that was not enough. You could hire cowboys to solve the labor problems there, and the Americans would welcome you with open arms and legs. Even in Winthrop, a 600 square meter villa by the sea, including a garden and garage, cost only $300,000 US. When converted to RMB, it was less than 2 million renminbi. It was more than 1.8 million US. Who can you ask for help with the housing prices? Jiang Hai was glad that he did not live in a place with such a high standard of living. The housing prices in Bing City were still okay. Some were cheap, and some were expensive. It was related to the location. Because Bing City's economy was stagnant, they had developed too much land in the past few years. This was mainly because Heilongjiang province was the biggest grain producer in China. To ensure that the whole country had enough to eat, the land in Heilongjiang province could only be used to grow grains and nothing else. The first thing that every leader had to ensure was the local food production. This was a hard and fast rule. That's why it was not ideal to attract investors or support the local businesses. Bing City did not have any large private enterprises, and all the large enterprises were state-owned enterprises. The most famous ones were Hefei and Harbin Pharmaceutical Company. Other than these, there was nothing else. This was why when the government allowed the cities to sell their land, Bing City sold too much land. But there were only a few people As a result, many of the buildings in the outer regions of Bing City could not be sold. In the outer regions of Bing City, the completed buildings were priced at 2,000 to 3,000 renminbi per square meter, and they were all renovated. These buildings could not be sold. This had indirectly lowered the property prices in Bing City. It was the same for villas. In the past, no one wanted to buy them. Some of the villas in the outskirts of the city were selling for 3,000 renminbi per square meter. Of course, Jiang Hai would not go to such a remote place. Although the place they went to today was not the best villa district in Bing City, it was not bad. Although it was located near the river, it was opposite the city government. Most importantly, many of the city government's people were living in this district. As their workplace was near, the security in this district was very good. After all, no one would dare to create trouble here. Jiang Hai and Fu Yuan drove the car. Not long after, they arrived at the community and went to the sales center that had not yet been demolished. As soon as he walked in, Jiang Hai felt the heat from the heater. He glanced around and saw the sand table in the middle of the lobby. In front of the reception desk in the distance, there were some women wearing office lady attire, eating melon seeds. But to Jiang Hai's surprise, these women only took a glance at them when they walked in. None of them came forward to introduce their properties. This made Jiang Hai confused. He looked at his attire. Am I being belittled? Could it be that I will have the chance to show off again? Thinking of this, Jiang Hai raised his eyebrows. Although it's a bit melodramatic, it's not bad. However, just as he was about to slap their faces, a Mercedes-Benz came from a distance and stopped at the door. Two people came out. Just as Jiang Hai was about to watch the waiters kneel down and lick their feet, Jiang Hai unexpectedly found that they were still indifferent. Chapter 928. What's going on? Looking at the two people outside, the only thing missing was the word nouveau riche written above their heads. The man was wearing a short mink, for big gold rings on his hands, and a thick gold chain around his neck. The woman beside him looked old enough to be his daughter. She was wearing a rainbow-colored mink and a short skirt in the middle of winter. Her boots were so high that it made people's hair stand on end. Her face was beautifully painted, and her hair was permed with big wavy curls. This was almost the standard face-slapping supporting role in urban novels. Looking at them like this, one would know how sharp they were. Coupled with the face-slapping, it might be cool, but it was inevitable that it would be melodramatic. But even so, with the stench of money, the ladies over there were still unmoved. They were eating melon seeds there, and they didn't even lift their eyelids. Looking at this situation, Jiang Hai was completely stunned. This is not following the routine. What's so strange about this? These ladies are civil servants. They don't rely on these things to make a living. It has nothing to do with them whether they can sell it or not. They are all paid. Seeing Jiang Hai's stunned expression, Fu Yuan couldn't help but smile, and then walked to the counter over there. The bathroom is over there. There are no ordinary houses. Seeing Jiang Hai walk over, a lady who looked about 40 years old rolled her eyes and said to Fu Yuan indifferently. Hearing this voice, Jiang Hai was really *********. I want to buy a villa. Looking at this person, Jiang Hai gently knocked on the table and then said seriously. See for yourself. If it's sold, it's sold. If you like it, call me. I'll take you to see the existing houses. There was no contempt. She was so indifferent, and she casually threw out a book that looked like a recipe. This lady said so. What made Jiang Hai a little depressed was that the two people who entered later also had the same experience. He had to admit that it was the first time Jiang Hai saw a real estate salesperson like this. It was almost as if the saleswoman's face was saying, "Do you want to buy it or not? If you don't want to buy it, just leave. I'm not making money anyway." Under such circumstances, it would be strange if their attitude was good. However, this also proved that this building was indeed a government project. In Huaxia, the government's reputation was more important than anyone else's. The government's buildings, regardless of whether they were office buildings or residences, were of the highest quality. If something were to happen, the company would go bankrupt. In a normal building, if a piece of the wall was chipped off, it could kill a person. In a government project, if a piece of the wall was chipped off and killed a person, even if the piece of wall was chipped off by someone else, the company could forget about continuing. Therefore, there was no need to worry about the quality. Secondly, there was the issue of safety. The residential area opposite the city government was already unsafe, so how could there be a safe place? The other supporting facilities were in a mess, so there was no need to worry. Jiang Hai flipped through the booklet with photos of the villa in front of him. Every page was of a villa. There were photos of the exterior, the surrounding situation, and the interior decoration. The houses at the front were smaller, while the ones at the back were bigger. There were 150 square meters, 200 square meters, 260 square meters, and 300 square meters. Jiang Hai counted with his fingers. There were a total of 24 people in his house. Him Chi Jia Chia Ai Xiao Si Feng Yinchen Daliana, Marian Aphrodite Dana, Hilda Page Sheila Ohilia Bridget Janice Rallis Carter, Wallace Shelley, Beliak Valentina, Galena, Azalina, Sarah, Duning and Chile. Of course, it was impossible for all of them to live here. But after all, there were so many of them. What if they lived here in the future? Jiang Hai was not short of money now. He could not possibly not have a place to stay when everyone came here. Thinking of this, the original idea of buying a small villa of about 300 square meters disappeared. Of course, there was another reason why he disappeared so quickly. The house prices here were cheaper than expected. The bigger the villa, the cheaper it was. Of course, this referred to the average price. Moreover, the recent crackdown was so severe that no one dared to buy these villas. Therefore, Jiang Hai calculated that with so many people in his house, it was impossible to live in a small villa. Therefore, he had to buy a bigger one. Therefore, he did not look at the small villas in front, and flipped directly to the big ones. What he saw was a 524 square meter villa with 2 floors. There were a total of 14 rooms. 9 of them were bedrooms. The other 5 rooms were a study room, a nursery, a warehouse, a gym, and a game room. The interior decoration was completed. He could move in directly with his bag. Network cable, washing clothes, kitchen items, everything was there. There was a sofa, a coffee table, and everything. If there was anything to buy, it would be a TV. Other than that, there was nothing else. Although he had to buy an air conditioner, it could not be used now. After all, the air conditioner would not work when it was -5 degrees Celsius. But here, how could it be more than -5 degrees Celsius? Therefore, heating was dependent on the heater. There was no need to care about this. Looking at the back, it was basically about this big. Then Jiang Hai did not have to worry about it. This house looked quite good. That's it. Can you take us to see it? Pointing to the villa, Jiang Hai said to the big sister in front of him. Here. Okay. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, the big sister did not care. After taking out a bunch of keys from the drawer, she walked out of the hall with Jiang Hai and Fu Yuan while eating sunflower seeds. The 3 of them walked into the residential area. As soon as they walked in, Jiang Hai nodded secretly. This residential area was really good. The entire residential area was not small. It was surrounded by multi-story buildings. All of them were 7-story buildings. But don't look down on the multi-story buildings. Every building here had many elevators. There was no need to climb up the multi-story buildings. Whether it was the architecture or the design, it belonged to the Soviet Russian-style European-style buildings. Taking advantage of the white snow, it really had some exotic charm. In the residential area, there were quite a lot of green belts. There were many trees. Of course, the green belt was now covered in snow. There were many roads, and there were not many cars in the residential area. Most of them were in the underground parking lot. The ones parked on the ground were all temporary. There were about 20 to 30 buildings around. A little further inside was the supporting facilities. There was a swimming pool, a fitness center, a shopping place, and a supermarket. Most of the household items could be completed without leaving the residential area. And further inside these places was the villa area. In the middle of the villa area was a man-made lake. It was not deep, about 1.5 meters, but the scenery looked good. There were pavilions, terraces, and pavilions. But now the lake was all frozen. The residential area's animal husbandry had built an ice rink here. The people in the residential area could skate here for free. Now on this ice rink, there were many little brats playing there happily. Around the lake were many villas. There were big and small villas far and near. The one that Jiang Hai had his eyes on was not far from the lake. The location was excellent. Otherwise, it would not be more than 500 meters and sell for more than 40 million. This residential area was actually built 5 years ago. The building here was slower, so it took 3 years to build. And 3 years ago, the houses here were already taken, especially these villas. Some of the high-ranking officials and the like everyone knew. Although these houses were usually some businessmen's in name. In reality, it was enough to know who lived in them. But a little surprising was that in those years, the current emperor ascended the throne. Naturally, the new emperor would bring in new ministers. Moreover, the current emperor had always been fighting against corruption. If the emperor was good, the subordinates would follow suit. They couldn't even afford to eat and drink on public funds. If someone were to find out that they were living in such a big villa, there would be nothing else to say except for Therefore, these houses had been fully renovated, but no one dared to take them, let alone live in them. Under such circumstances they sold it. At the beginning, it was priced at 200 million, but no one bought it. Later, it was priced at 100 million, but still no one bought it. A year ago it was priced at 50 million. They could not lower it anymore, or they would lose money. How much did they spend on this land? The decoration inside was definitely the highest level of decoration for the commoners. Just the bathroom alone was imported from Italy. The decoration hardware of a toilet cost more than 200,000. There were a total of 5 toilets in this villa, not to mention the other places. So now it was 46 million, and there was no way to lower it anymore. Today, Jiang Hai was also waiting. Following this big sister, Jiang Hai opened the door and walked into the villa that they had their eyes on. As soon as he walked in, he smelled a musty smell. This was normal. There was also a lot of dust in the villa. This was also normal. After walking in, Fu Yuan's phone did not stop ringing. For him, there were not many opportunities to come here, let alone come in and take a look. Jiang Hai was checking around water, electricity, gas and furniture. After walking around for more than half an hour, Jiang Hai confirmed that there was nothing wrong with this villa. He also nodded. How is it? If you want to buy it, then we'll go back and sign the contract. I still have to find someone from the bank to come over and help you with the loan. If you don't like it, then forget it. You can also look at other unsold ones. Seeing Jiang Hai nod after walking around, the big sister also patted the sunflower seed crumbs on her hand and asked Jiang Hai, "No need to find a bank, I'll pay in full." Hearing the big sister's words, Jiang Hai also smiled. Bank? Does he need it? Chapter 929. Jiang Hai paid for the house in full with his credit card. After that, he went straight to the house, garage keys, access card and so on. Although these people were civil servants and worked for the government, they did not make things difficult for Jiang Hai. Jiang Hai finished the house on the same day. The next day, Jiang Hai started to decorate the entire villa. In fact, there was nothing much to decorate, but a big bed was necessary. There was also a wardrobe, kitchen items, and a TV. Of course, there was not only one TV. Every room had to have one. Although Jiang Hai was only staying for a few days, he did not want to suffer. As for the internet, Jiang Hai paid for it for 3 years. This saved him the trouble of paying for it every time he came back. Anyway, he did not care about a few hundred yuan a month. Of course, Jiang Hai's internet was the fastest. After all, there were at most 24 people here. 24 people, 24 mobile phones, not including computers, iPads, and so on. In total, there would be at least 50 devices using Wi-Fi. A normal network would not be able to carry them. The first day, he did the shopping. The second day, he installed the house. The third day, he got someone to clean the house. On the fourth day, he bought quilts, bedsheets, and so on. On the fifth day, he tidied up the house. A week passed just like that. At noon on the fifth day, Jiang Hai received a call. Azalina had already brought Ai Xiaoxi, Feng Yinchen, Daliana, Marion, Wallace, Shelley, Leslie, Carter, Beliak, Valentina, Galena, Alfred, Aphrodite, Dana, Hilda, Becky, Sheila, Ohilia, Bridget, and Janice on the plane from New York to Imperial Capital. Originally, Jiang Hai wanted to bring Tarak along. Unfortunately, Tarak was a Native American. It did not matter if he lived with Jiang Hai, but she did not have a household registration. Without a household registration, there was no way to apply for a passport. When Jiang Hai wanted to bring her back to China, it was already too late. Perhaps when Jiang Hai returned to China next year, she might follow him. As for Qi Jie and Qi Ya, they didn't want others to know about their relationship with Jiang Hai. After all, it would be quite embarrassing if word got out. Qi Jie and Qi Ya didn't want others to know about their relationship with Jiang Hai. Therefore, they returned to Miami first, and then went to Beijing a day later. At that time, they would come back with Qi Li. They slept in the new house. At noon the next day, Jiang Hai received a call from Qi Li, telling him that his harem had arrived. However, Ai Xiaoxi flew back to her hometown directly. The other girls also rested for a while before flying to Bing City. They told Jiang Hai to prepare to pick them up. Jiang Hai was somewhat embarrassed about what Qi Li said about his harem. But this was also a fact, so Jiang Hai did not say anything. After the girls boarded the plane, Jiang Hai called a Toyota coaster he rented a few days ago. If it was Jiang Hai who bought it, he would definitely not buy a Japanese car. But there was no way to rent it. Jiang Hai had 19 people with him. Ai Xiaoxi went back to her hometown. So including him there were 19 people. Where could he find a 19-seater car? So, he could only rent this minibus. But there was a problem. Jiang Hai could not rent such a minibus by himself. His driver's license was only C in China, and he could only rent a car with less than 7 seats. So he had to rent a driver. Fortunately, Jiang Hai gave him a lot of money. Because Jiang Hai did not smoke, he did not give him a cigarette. Instead, he gave him a tip of $100. Although the green dollars could not be spent in China, as long as he went to the bank, it would be more than 600 yuan. Naturally, the driver was quite happy. After Jiang Hai made a phone call, the minibus arrived at the gate of Jiang Hai's community. After leaving the community, Jiang Hai sat in the co-pilot's seat and went to the airport. When they arrived at the airport, the plane there had not yet landed. While chatting with the driver, Jiang Hai's mobile phone vibrated. Listening to Azalina's voice, Jiang Hai smiled and immediately went to the waiting hall. He saw the girls carrying a lot of things. Although they were only here for the new year, and they might not stay for more than half a month, they still brought a lot of things. Jiang Hai led the women to the parking lot. The driver in the parking lot was stunned. He only knew that he was here to pick someone up, but he didn't expect that he would pick up such a beautiful foreign girl. Looking at Jiang Hai's intimate appearance with them, the driver couldn't help but smack his lips. The world's morals are really deteriorating. But when the girls got in the car, the driver uncle, who was still smoking and talking dirty with Jiang Hai, seemed to have changed into a different person. With a warm smile on his face, he even took the initiative to come down and help with the luggage. However, the girls did not need to use him, because they were in Jiang Hai's manor all day, eating Jiang Hai's beef and seafood. Although the girls looked delicate, they were not weak at all. At least they could carry their own things easily. After seeing the girls put down their luggage, the driver also looked at Jiang Hai. Originally, he was a little envious of this kid. But now, it seemed that this kid's body was not weak at all. Everyone had arrived, and Du Ning would protect Qi Li. After Qi Jie and Qi Ya arrived, they would come back tomorrow. So now that everyone on the minibus had arrived, the driver stepped on the accelerator and headed toward the villa area that Jiang Hai had bought. Along the way, many girls were chattering and looking at Ice City outside. Because they were Jiang Hai's daughters, Delina and Marion had been there several times, so they were not unfamiliar with Ice City. Feng Yunchen was also from Ice City, so it was mainly the three of them who were introducing, while the others were listening. Unknowingly, Jiang Hai and the others had arrived at their own home. After arriving home, Jiang Hai told the driver that he would call him if he needed anything. After all, in the future, Jiang Hai will take these girls to see the ice lanterns, to see the snow sculptures, to play by the river, and to eat authentic pig slaughtered dishes and so on. These small cars won't be able to fit them all. Knowing that there would be work in the future, the driver was very happy. He could make money, and at the same time, it was a good thing. After the driver left, Jiang Hai also returned home. But when he came back, he found that the house was in a mess. Because everyone was looking for their own rooms. Only Feng Yunshan was sitting there, watching TV. What? Don't you want to find your own room? Or are you going to stay in my room all the time? Looking at Feng Yunshan, Jiang Hai also smiled, then sat beside her. And regardless of whether she wanted to or not, he directly hugged her on his lap. Stupid, I'm back, how can I not go home? Feng Yunshan rolled her eyes at Jiang Hai and said. When he heard her words, Jiang Hai couldn't help but feel embarrassed for a moment. He forgot that Feng Yunshan was also from Ice City. The two of them were classmates. It was not only Jiang Hai who knew Feng Yunshan, but also Jiang Hai's junior high school classmates. Well, when are you leaving? Looking at Feng Yunshan, Jiang Hai asked carefully. What, you want to drive me away? Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Feng Yunshan's eyes narrowed, and she said with a reluctant look, I don't dare, I'm kidding, I'll be happy if you don't leave. Looking at her appearance, Jiang Hai also smiled. For so many years, Jiang Hai's progress in this area was not too great, otherwise he would not have said the first sentence. But fortunately, his ability to smooth things over is getting stronger and stronger. Sure enough, practice is the real truth. You know how to talk. After dinner, remember to send me home. Looking at Jiang Hai, Feng Yunshan smiled, and then hugged Jiang Hai. In fact, she was also a little tangled in her heart. She was Jiang Hai's classmate. Ai Xiaoxi's parents were urging her to get married, let alone her. But she couldn't be like Ai Xiaoxi and ask when Jiang Hai would marry her, because she knew that she was congenitally deficient. Originally, she was just going to find Jiang Hai as a way out, but she didn't expect that she would fall into this trap. But what should she say now? What should she do? These were all problems, and she could only face these problems by herself. Looking at Ai Xiaoxi in front of him, Jiang Hai's sixth sense told him that the woman in front of him had something on her mind, but Jiang Hai didn't know what it was, and he didn't know if he should ask. All he could do was hug her tightly and tell her that he was by her side soon. Jiang Hai and the others made dinner in the villa, and then Jiang Hai and Feng Yunshan left together. They took a taxi and went straight to Feng Yunshan's house. Along the way, the two of them didn't say anything, but their hands were tightly held. When they arrived, Jiang Hai and Feng Yunshan also got out of the car. When they got out, Jiang Hai naturally put her hand into his pocket. Feeling Jiang Hai's action, Feng Yunshan's face turned slightly red, but she didn't struggle or resist. She just walked forward slowly, and the streetlights elongated their shadows. But as they got closer and closer to home, Feng Yunshan also gently bit her lips, raised her head, and looked at Jiang Hai beside her. To be honest, on one side was her parents, and on the other was Jiang Hai. She really wanted to go with Jiang Hai, but she couldn't say it. Looking at her eyes, Jiang Hai thought for a moment and suddenly stopped. This year's third day, I'll go to your house. Jiang Hai stopped, and Feng Yunshan looked at him with some confusion. Looking at her confused eyes, Jiang Hai first smiled, then looked into her eyes and said seriously. Chapter 930. What are you doing? Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Feng Yunshan was suddenly stunned. She looked at Jiang Hai with some doubts. Although she vaguely guessed something in her heart, all she could do at this time was to play dumb. I have to let your dad and mom know who you left with. If you can't find him, I have to let them know who to call the police to arrest, right? Listening to Feng Yunshan's words, Jiang Hai also smiled, and then said to her, You are going to murder for money. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Feng Yunshan couldn't help but pat Jiang Hai with her other hand, and said with some reproach, but looking at her raised mouth, it is not difficult to see that she really likes Jiang Hai's proposal. There are some words that she can't say. After all, before Jiang Hai, she was not like Ai Xiaoxi and Qili. Before she fell in love with Jiang Hai, she just regarded Jiang Hai as a road. If there is one, then there is one. If there is none, then forget it. But after she lived with Jiang Hai for a long time, there is a good saying, love grows with time. Maybe it is because of the long time before Jiang Hai, feelings will develop. So Feng Yunshan's feelings for Jiang Hai are also slowly changing. She is not willing to leave Jiang Hai, whether it is because of him, or because of his money, his home, his beef, or even she can accept other people for Jiang Hai. She may also be the one who accepted it the most calmly among these people. Qi Li, Qi Jie, Qi Ya, and Ai Xiaoxi all went through a psychological struggle, but she accepted it the fastest because she knew that she was not qualified to choose. So when Jiang Hai met Ai Xiaoxi's parents, Feng Yunshan actually had this idea, but she had no way to mention it. Now that Jiang Hai mentioned it, it would be nonsense to say that she was not touched. So after slapping Jiang Hai, she took the initiative to wrap her arms around Jiang Hai's waist, and buried her head in Jiang Hai's arms and turned hard. Is what you said true? After a while, she raised her head, looked at Jiang Hai, and asked seriously, of course, go back and tell uncle and auntie that I will come over on the 3rd day of the new year. Touching Feng Yunshan's hair, Jiang Hai chuckled and said to her. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Feng Yunshan also bit her lips, then she nodded hard. Feng Yunshan. Just as the two of them were done being intimate, and were about to walk forward, a voice that was 3 parts surprised, 3 parts emotional, and 4 parts angry came from the front. Jiang Hai and Feng Yunshan looked toward the source of the voice, and saw a person, who was almost as tall as Jiang Hai. At this time he was standing there, holding a bouquet of flowers in his hand, looking at them in a daze. Tian Chou. Looking at this person, Jiang Hai could not help but raise his eyebrows. He also knew this person, Jiang Hai and Feng Yunshan's junior high school classmate. Jiang Hai remembered that the day he and Feng Yunshan reunited was the day of their classmates' reunion. At that time he was also there. At the table, he was very attentive to Feng Yunshan, but in the end, Feng Yunshan left with him. After that, Jiang Hai did not see him again, but now what kind of person is he? Tian Chou. Why are you here? Looking at the person in front of her, Feng Yunshan asked with some doubt. She didn't know why he was here, because she hadn't seen him since that time she saw him. This guy is married. Do you know that? Looking at the almost same reaction of the 2 people in front of him, Tian Chou walked in front of the 2 of them in a few steps, pointed at Jiang Hai with a trembling finger, and said to Feng Yunshan in a deep voice. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai's brows couldn't help but frown. Jiang Hai could hear the anger in his words. But this is F***King Bullsh**. I know, I have always been a mistress, don't you know? Hearing Tian Chou's words, Feng Yunshan took the initiative to stand in front of Jiang Hai, and said to Tian Chou with an unhappy face. Hearing her words, Tian Chou could not help but choke. Yunshan, you know I don't mean that. Hearing Feng Yunshan's words, Tian Chou said anxiously. I don't care if you mean that or not, I mean that. What are you doing here? Feng Yunshan waved her hand. She didn't have a good impression of Tian Chou. This was the case a long time ago. Otherwise, with Tian Chou's capital, if she was really interested in him, the 2 of them would have been together long ago, and Jiang Hai wouldn't have taken advantage of it. Cough. I heard from uncle and auntie that you are coming back today, so I have been waiting for you. I am divorced, so. Hearing Feng Yunshan's words, Tian Chou said with a hesitant face. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai raised his eyebrows. F***ck, this guy is looking for death, right? You are divorced and you dare to come and steal my woman? Does he not want to live anymore? Thinking of this, Jiang Hai couldn't help but take a step forward, but he was blocked by Feng Yunshan. Whether you are divorced or not has nothing to do with me. I can only express my pity for you. What you have to do now is to find a person who loves you, because I have found my own happiness. Feng Yunshan knew that Tian Chou's family was an official. Although the official position was not high, it was in the public security department. His father was a captain. Jiang Hai's power was in the United States. In the United States, not to mention a captain, even a bureau chief had to take the initiative to bow to Jiang Hai. But in China, the situation was not good. So in her opinion, Jiang Hai had better not have any conflict with him. If there was anything, she would settle it for Jiang Hai. Your happiness? Your happiness is this guy. Pointing at Jiang Hai, Tian Chou had looked down on Jiang Hai since he was in school. Of course, not only Jiang Hai, he also looked down on most people. Because Jiang Hai was very ordinary, his academic results were not good, his height was not high, and his family was not rich. There were more than 40 students in the class. Jiang Hai was in the 30s every time. Basically, passing was the best result. His studies were not good, and his family was not good. So in Tian Chou's opinion, he was a person who had no future. Including Jiang Hai, Fu Yuan, Xiang Hua, and the others, he pinched half of his eyes and looked down on these people. However, he was slapped in the face by Jiang Hai twice in a row in love, and he couldn't stand it. He couldn't afford to offend the one Feng Yinshan found before. But it didn't mean that he couldn't afford to offend Jiang Hai. Looking at Jiang Hai, his eyes were burning with anger. Looking at his appearance, Jiang Hai smiled disdainfully. Then, he gently hugged Feng Yinshan's waist, turned her head, and gently kissed her lips. Seeing this scene, Tian Chou was stunned, and Feng Yinshan was also a little surprised. She's willing. What can you do? She's also willing to eat rice and vegetables with me. What can you do? Looking at Tian Chou's eyes that were about to pop out, Jiang Hai said disdainfully. Although Jiang Hai's power was not in the country, don't forget that Jiang Hai was now a major shareholder of the Qi Group. And if it was based on shares, he was the first shareholder. This guy's father was just a small captain of the Public Security Bureau. He couldn't even fight with a third-rate businessman, let alone Tian Chou. Whether or not he was using the tiger's skin, Jiang Hai couldn't deal with the second or third generation of the Red family with the Qi Group. But the general rich second generation, or the second generation of a small official like him, Jiang Hai was really confident. You son of a bitch. Seeing that Jiang Hai still dared to provoke him like this, Tian Chou was about to go crazy. With a roar, he threw away the flowers in his hand and rushed toward Jiang Hai. But how could he compare with Jiang Hai's speed? Seeing him rushing over, Jiang Hai went up and kicked him right in the middle of his mouth. Then Tian Chou was like a rolling gourd flying out upside down. After rolling several times on the ground, he hit the pile of snow next to him and stopped. But his face was covered in dust. Because it was winter, he was wearing thick clothes. So although the strength of this kick was not small, at most, it left a purple mark on his mouth. But it was enough to make him temporarily lose his combat power. You dare to hit me. Covering his mouth and feeling the sharp pain there, Tian Chou pointed at Jiang Hai and said with a horrified face. It seemed that Jiang Hai was about the same height as him, but he couldn't understand how Jiang Hai had so much strength. So what if I hit you? If you dare to be cocky again, I will destroy your family. When picking an opponent, it's best to know the other party's situation before you start. My wife is the chairman of the Qi Group, and I am the largest shareholder of the Qi Group. Does the Qi Group know what this means? If you don't, go back and ask your father. If I see you here again, I will let you know why the flowers are so red. Looking at Tian Chou's horrified eyes, Jiang Hai naturally walked over with Feng Yinshan in his arms, and said word by word to Tian Chou, who was still lying in the snow. After speaking, without waiting for him to react, Jiang Hai left with Feng Yinshan in his arms. Listening to Jiang Hai's powerful words, Feng Yinshan's face was quite red. She leaned in Jiang Hai's arms and slowly walked downstairs. Go up. Looking at the electronic door in front of him, Jiang Hai stroked Feng Yinshan's hair again, and said to her with a smile. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Feng Yinshan also nodded, then took out the key and opened the door. But before going in, she turned back and kissed the corner of Jiang Hai's mouth, then went in with a grin. Listening to Feng Yinshan's footsteps quickly going upstairs, Jiang Hai also touched the corner of his mouth. This feeling is weird. Not long after, Jiang Hai received a WeChat message from Feng Yinshan that she had arrived home. Then he turned and left. When he went back, he found that Tian Chou was gone. But it didn't matter whether he was here or not. Just like what Jiang Hai said, he didn't take Tian Chou seriously. Today he came over and got kicked. If he dared to come again, then it wouldn't be a matter of 1 or 2 kicks. Whistling, Jiang Hai returned to the gate of the community, called another car, and went to his villa in Jiangbei. Chapter 931. Looking at Jiang Hai's back as he left, Feng Yinshan tightened her grip on her phone, then opened the door and walked in. As soon as she walked in, she found her parents sitting in the living room watching TV in the distance. When they saw Feng Yinshan walk in, the two of them looked at her, but their expressions were a little different. Feng Yinshan's mother's eyes were full of worry, while her father's eyes had a trace of anger. Yinshan, you're back. Have you had dinner? You must be tired. Come and sit down and rest. Looking at Feng Yinshan's mother stood up and said to her with a smile on her face, Mom, it's okay. I've had dinner. I'm not tired. Hearing her mother's words, Feng Yinshan shook her head and smiled. Why are you worried about her? Will she still be hungry? What kind of food can't she eat? Hearing what Feng Yinshan said, Feng Yinshan's father said with a straight face. Hearing his words, the originally not very warm feeling in the room dropped below the freezing point, and the smile on Feng Yinshan's face also disappeared. Stop talking. Our daughter only comes back for a few days a year, and you still have to give her a hard time. Feng Yinshan's mother couldn't help but complain as she tugged at Feng Yinshan's father's clothes. Who asked her to come back for 2 days? Who asked her to come back? Did I ask her to come back? Why did she come back? To embarrass me? All of my relatives and friends. Who doesn't know that she's a mistress outside? Why did she come back? She came back to anger me to death. However, Feng Yinshan's mother's tugging didn't make Feng Yinshan's father change his mind. Instead, he straightened his neck and shouted, What do you have to say to me? Why are you shouting at my mother? Yes, I went out to be someone's mistress, but don't you think about who it is for? If I didn't go out to be a mistress, who bought this house? Now who are you eating, wearing, and using? If I didn't go out to be someone's mistress, you would have been dead for 7 or 8 years. Do you know that? Hearing her father's angry roar, Feng Yinshan didn't choose to swallow her anger. Instead, she also straightened her neck and shouted loudly, How can you say that? I'd rather die than let you do these things. Even if I were to live, I wouldn't be able to straighten my back. Hearing Feng Yinshan's resistance, Feng Yinshan's father also shouted loudly. Feng Yinshan's mother was in the middle. Tears were about to come out. Looking at her mother's appearance, Feng Yinshan also took a deep breath. For the sake of her mother, she couldn't argue with her father like that. However, it was inevitable that her heart would ache. This kind of scene happened almost every year. In her opinion, the whole world could criticize her, but only her father couldn't. Forget it, I'm too lazy to argue with you. If you don't like it, then close your eyes. Who told you to look? Mom, I'm going back to my room to sleep. Shaking her head, Feng Yinshan finally made a concession. Then, she ignored her father and walked straight into her room. Seeing Feng Yinshan walk in, her father also sighed. Then, he helplessly rubbed his forehead and lowered his head. Only Feng Yinshan's mother was left. Looking at her father like this, she didn't know what to say. After a while, she walked into her daughter's room. After walking into the room, she saw Feng Yinshan lying on the bed. She didn't cry. Instead, she was looking at a photo. It was a photo of them in junior high school. This photo was a long time ago, and it was already a little yellow. In the corner of the last row of the photo, Jiang Hai was hugging her arms and looking at the sky. Looking at Jiang Hai, her originally bad mood calmed down a little. Seeing that her daughter's mood was still good, Feng Yinshan's mother also sat beside her. Don't blame your father. You also know that we don't have much ability. The money for you to go to junior high school was earned by us selling vegetables to support you. In your father's eyes, he is the head of the family, so if there is anything, he has to shoulder it. Now, he has to use his daughter's happiness to exchange for his life. He just feels a little uncomfortable in his heart. Feng Yinshan's mother said softly as she touched Feng Yinshan's hair. I know that he cares about his face, but the whole world can scold me, but he can't. Hearing her mother's words, Feng Yinshan also muttered in a low voice. Although her voice was very soft, her tone was very firm. Obviously, the matter on Feng Yinshan's side was still different from what she had imagined. To put it simply, this was the case. Feng Yinshan was originally very normal when she was in junior high school and high school. She also went to university. However, during university, because she was beautiful and had a good figure, She went to SG and model, and came into contact with some rich people. However, she didn't do that kind of thing. She just stood on the stage and walked in a show to earn some pocket money. It was enough for her to live. But at this moment, when her father went to serve the dishes, he was hit by a car. The driver who caused the accident ran away and needed a sum of money for surgery. Then, she agreed to a boss Lou who had been pursuing her and used her body to exchange for money. Then the follow-up happened. So in her opinion, if it wasn't for her father, she might not have become like this. Her father also felt that he couldn't hold his face in the midst of self-blame and regret. He had to sell his daughter to save his life. His self-esteem couldn't take it. Therefore, over the years, the relationship between the two had never been very good. Once they came back, they would always have a quarrel. Your personality is exactly the same as your father's. Moreover, what your father said is not completely unreasonable. You are not young now. Our family can be considered to be doing well now. See if you want to come back. It's not like you are always being a concubine for others. With a sigh, Feng Yunshin's mother said with some heartache for her daughter. By the way, your classmate named Tian Cho often comes over these past few days. I think he is interested in you. Do you think you can develop it? Speaking of this, Feng Yunshin's mother couldn't help but think of the person who often came over these past few days. Hey, don't say that. I'm doing very well now. That Tian Cho is not a good person. By the way, Mom, my boyfriend might come over in the 3rd year of junior high. At the mention of Tian Cho, Feng Yunshin was furious. She slapped away her mother's hand and said excitedly. However, after she finished speaking, she found that her mother's expression was not very good. How should we address him then? After thinking for a while, her mother asked carefully. They didn't know about Feng Yunshin and Jiang Hai. They thought that Feng Yunshin was with Boss Liu, so they were a little confused. Because they knew that Boss Liu's age was not younger than them. How should they address him then? What are you thinking about? My current boyfriend is called Jiang Hai. He is our junior high school classmate. He is the same age as me, and a few months younger than me. You can call him Little Jiang. Looking at her mother's expression, Feng Yunshin couldn't help but laugh and said, your classmate? What is he like? What does he do? Hearing Feng Yunshin's words, Feng Yunshin's mother couldn't help but light up. Does it mean that my daughter is no longer a mistress? Therefore, she immediately asked anxiously. Yes, he looks like this. What does he do? And he raises cattle and fish in the United States. The beef and seafood that you ate that I sent over were produced by him. Don't underestimate him. He is very rich. Hearing her mother's words, Feng Yunshin also pointed to Jiang Hai in the photo, and then introduced him with a smile. In her opinion, Jiang Hai was her baby. Oh, I see. Then this time you came back. Are you going to get married or? Looking at her daughter's happy look, Feng Yunshin's mother's eyes also lit up. If her daughter really came back, it would really be a good thing. No, he is married. His wife is the chairman of the Qi group. Shaking her head, Feng Yunshin knew that she had no chance to marry Jiang Hai. At least it seemed like this now. It's like this again. She sighed. Hope had just emerged, but it was suppressed. It was really helpless. But he is really a good man. But he's really a good person. Don't worry. Every successful man has a mistress behind him. He's really a great person. His wealth and power are far from what Boss Liu used to be. And he's also very good to me. We live together every day. We'll live together for the rest of our lives. Don't worry. Looking at the regret in her mother's eyes, Feng Yunshin also smiled and comforted her mother. Seeing that her daughter had already decided, Feng Yunshin's mother didn't know what to say. But in the 3rd year of junior high school, it didn't prevent her from looking at this child named Jiang Hai. Anyway, from the photo, this kid was ordinary. At night, Feng Yunshin's mother also told her father about this matter. Knowing that his daughter had found happiness, although she was still a mistress, her father felt very uncomfortable in his heart. But since it was her decision, he had no right to ask. He could only turn his head and treat it as a tacit agreement if he didn't ask. Her classmates were better than those old men. The night was silent. The next day, Feng Yunshin woke up early and was busy in the kitchen. This was the breakfast she learned to make from Chia. It was not easy to go home. Although she had been quarreling with her father, after all, this was her family. No matter what happened to Feng Yunshan, Jiang Hai also woke up early today, because Qi Li and the others were coming back today. Therefore, Jiang Hai had to pick up Qi Li first. Of course, Qi Ye, Qi Jia, and Du Ning had to come back together. Du Ning was easy to say. She lived directly in Jiang Hai's villa. But Qi Ye and Qi Jia, ***, it was a little awkward no matter how one thought about it. But things had already happened. Even if Jiang Hai had to bite the bullet, he had to go. Chapter 932. Brother-in-law, please help me with my luggage. Brother-in-law, please help me with my clothes. Thank you. Qi Ye and Qi Jia said to Jiang Hai, while looking for clothes in their luggage, at the Taiping International Airport in Bing City. Hearing their words, Jiang Hai could only stand aside and help them with their clothes awkwardly. He lowered his head as much as possible, so that Qi Li wouldn't notice his awkwardness. To be honest, he was indeed very uncomfortable. In order to show that they had just returned from Miami, Qi Ye and Qi Jia even made their clothes look like they were from the south. Even though they knew that it was cold in Bing City, they didn't wear much. They only brought a lot of clothes and changed after getting off the plane. Since they were acting, they didn't arouse Qi Li's suspicion. At this time, Qi Li was talking to Du Ning about what clothes to wear. They were very happy with their acting, but Jiang Hai was a little, embarrassed. Perhaps he was the most embarrassed one in the whole scene. Oh, and Du Ning. But Du Ning just pretended not to know. After the four women were ready, Jiang Hai and the others left the waiting hall and went to the airport parking lot. This time Jiang Hai didn't rent a car. Instead, he specially went to his and Qi Li's home. After getting the key, he drove a BMW from the garage downstairs. This car was Qi Li's car. After buying a Rolls-Royce, she didn't use it and left it here. Jiang Hai happened to drive this car to pick them up. After putting their luggage in, the three Qi sisters sat in the back, while Du Ning sat in the front passenger seat of Jiang Hai. Jiang Hai drove. You go home first and stay at home for a few days. I will go back tomorrow, or the day after tomorrow. After getting in the car, Qi Li said to Qi Jia and Qi Ya. Her commanding tone made Qi Jia twitch her mouth. Oh, I know. You and brother-in-law. Absence makes the heart grow fonder. Hearing Qi Li's words, Qi Jia said with a smile. Hearing Qi Jia's words, Qi Li couldn't help but blush. You will get married sooner or later. What are you so proud of? I will teach you a lesson then. However, Qi Li didn't deny it. Instead, she glared at them and said with a frown. Hearing her words, Qi and Qi Ya also laughed. As for the way they looked at Jiang Hai, it was very interesting. As for Jiang Hai, who was sitting in front, he felt as if he was sitting on pins and needles. He didn't say anything all the way until he sent them home. Brother-in-law, remember to come and play during the new year. When they arrived at the door, Qi Jia and Qi Ya also got out of the car and said to Jiang Hai with a smile. Only Jiang Hai knew what they meant by come and play. After coughing twice awkwardly, Jiang Hai didn't have the intention to go in and sit. He directly started the engine and left. Where are Delina and the others? You brought back so many at once. It seems that the food you ate in the United States is good for your health. Seeing Qi Jia and Qi Ya's figures walk into the mansion, Qi Li also smiled. In her opinion, Jiang Hai was so uncomfortable because he was shy. After the two sisters left, she asked Jiang Hai. Of course, the jealousy in her words was unavoidable. Oh, I bought a villa in Bingcheng. They are all there. Hearing Qi Li's words, Jiang Hai also said a little awkwardly. Qi Li had seen Azalina, Aphrodite, and the others before. She was also very clear about their relationship with Jiang Hai. Therefore, she said this to make Jiang Hai feel awkward. She didn't want him to feel as uncomfortable as Qi Jia and Qi Ya. TSK. Glancing at Jiang Hai, Qi Li didn't say anything. Then, she picked up her makeup bag and started to touch up her makeup. Although her face was basically fruit makeup, some places still needed to be touched up. This was also to show the majesty of the Empress, wasn't it? In her opinion, the reason why Jiang Hai has so many women is because she is partly responsible for it. At this time, Since she had already decided to accept Jiang Hai, then these women, even if they were passive, she would accept them. But accepting was accepting. Just like the families in ancient Huaxia, these people had to be clear about who was the empress and who was the concubine. In this family, Jiang Hai had the final say. She was behind him. She couldn't tolerate these little sluts climbing over her head. Looking at Qi Li's queen-like aura in the rearview mirror, Jiang Hai couldn't help but smile bitterly. When Du Ning saw Jiang Hai's expression, she couldn't help but shake Jiang Hai's hand to show that she supported him morally. In this regard, Jiang Hai could only chuckle. He had nothing else to say. The car soon arrived at the villa Jiang Hai bought in Jiangbei. After parking the car in the underground parking lot, Jiang Hai carried his luggage and brought Qi Li and Du Ning upstairs. After opening the door of the villa, the first thing they felt was the warm atmosphere. In fact, although the winter in the north was -20 to 30 degrees Celsius, more than 90% of northerners were afraid of the cold. When the temperature in the house was around 10 degrees Celsius, the house would not be able to withstand it. This was also the reason why so many wolves from the north were frozen like dogs in the south, especially in the area around the Yangtze River. When the temperature was at its coldest, it would be around 0 degrees Celsius. That was simply fatal. For example, in Ice City, the temperature in the house would be maintained at least 24 degrees Celsius. It was completely different from the world of ice and snow outside. Basically, modern people didn't spend much time outside after all. Even if they went to work, it would only be colder during the commute to work. Whether it was at the office or at home, it was very warm. Therefore, it was nonsense to say that northerners carried the cold. In fact, most northerners didn't carry the cold like their brothers and sisters in the south. Feeling the warm air, Jiang Hai also walked in with Qi Li and Du Ning. As soon as they walked in, Jiang Hai realized that Qi Li's despotic power was really strong. Everyone who was talking and chatting there instantly fell silent. Aphrodite and the others, who originally had a lower status in Jiang Hai's family, immediately walked over with smiling faces. Aphrodite first came over to brush the snow off Qi Li's body. Then Dana went to do it for Du Ning. Hilda came over to take the clothes and hang them up. Paige was still looking for slippers. Sheila, Ashiria, Bridget, and Jennifer all came over with smiles on their faces. "You're back, have you eaten? There are dumplings we made in the kitchen. They might not look good, but if you haven't eaten, I'll cook them now." Looking at Qi Li in front of her, Aphrodite said with a smile while doing her work. "Yeah, I'm a bit hungry. The food on the plane really doesn't taste good. What about you guys? Are you hungry too?" Hearing Aphrodite's words, Qi Li also said very indifferently. The majesty of a first wife was undoubtedly displayed at this time. "I'm okay. I went to pick you guys up after eating. Du Ning must be hungry too." Hearing her words, Jiang Hai shook his head, then looked at Du Ning and said. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Du Ning also nodded. She didn't dare to be like Qi Li, acting like an empress dowager. She still remembered her status. In this family, the highest status was naturally Qi Li and Ai Xiaoxi. But now that Ai Xiaoxi wasn't here, then Qi Li was like an empress dowager. And if Qi Li wasn't here, then the highest status would be Qi Jie, Qi Ya, and Ai Xiaoxi. Below them would be Azalina and Feng Yunqian. Azalina was responsible for their safety, and was also one of the people who had the best contact with Jiang Hai. So naturally there was nothing to say. Below them were Delina, Marian, and Taraga. Although these three didn't have anything to do with Jiang Hai treated them like little sisters and daughters, so their status was naturally very high. Below them were the remaining bodyguards and Aphrodite. But the job of these bodyguards was to protect these people, so they didn't have to do housework and the like. In fact, in Jiang Hai's view, although he didn't say that he treated everyone equally, it was basically the same. These rankings were all given by them. Jiang Hai was also a bit speechless. It made him seem like he was very pretentious. Even his own women had to be ranked. Wasn't he thinking too much? "Okay, let's go cook." After hearing Qi Li's words, Aphrodite and the others hung up Qi Li's clothes and went into the kitchen to cook the dumplings. Speaking of which, the reason why they knew how to make dumplings now was because of Jiang Hai. because Jiang Hai liked the feeling of being in harmony, and because they also liked to eat dumplings, they basically knew how to make them now. After coming here, because they didn't have anywhere to go these 2 days, and Jiang Hai was also very busy, they made a lot of dumplings themselves. Now that they heard that Qi Li wanted to eat, they went to cook. After Qi Li changed into slippers, she directly followed Jiang Hai to the master bedroom. After walking in, she ignored the smell in Jiang Hai's room, and also ignored Jiang Hai's messy clothes. She walked directly to the closet, opened her suitcase, and started hanging clothes inside. From today onwards, this room is mine. You have to sleep here every night. When I fall asleep, you can do whatever you want. But when I wake up in the morning, you have to be by my side, understand? Qi Li said to Jiang Hai as she hung the clothes. Her queen-like appearance made Jiang Hai really want to say why. But when the words reached his mouth, they became, I understand. Sigh. It's said that Northeasterners like to beat their wives. But you have to understand that most Northeasterners' wives are also Northeasterners. You can't expect them to not fight back, right? Chapter 933. Time for fun always passed quickly. Unknowingly, New Year's Day was coming. Jiang Hai and the others were not idle these days. They ate what they wanted to eat and played. They saw ice lanterns, snow sculptures, went skiing and ate pig dishes. After resting at home for a day, it was New Year's Eve. However, on New Year's Eve, Jiang Hai did not meet Qi Li at home. Instead, he went to Qi Li's house. Now that Jiang Hai's parents were gone, it was New Year's Eve. How could he not have an elder with him? And most importantly, Jiang Hai said that he would go to Feng Yunshan's house on the 3rd day of New Year's Eve. So it was inevitable that he would go to Qi Li's house on New Year's Eve. This morning, after Jiang Hai arranged for Azalina and the others, he and Qi Li drove to Qi Li's house. After parking the car, Jiang Hai and Qi Li walked to the door of the house and knocked. Not long after, the door opened from the inside. Jiang Hai saw Xue Yi several times before, and she was still wearing the maid costume. It seemed that she liked it very much. According to Qi Jie's words, she really liked this kind of clothes. Her wardrobe was full of such clothes, but the colors were different. After seeing Jiang Hai and Qi Li, the corners of Zheng Xue's mouth couldn't help but curl up. Then she immediately withdrew it. Uncle and the others are at home, Zheng Xue whispered to Jiang Hai, and Qi Li after glancing behind her. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai and Qi Li couldn't help but look at each other. What were they doing here? Zheng Xue was adopted by the Qi family since she was young, so she also called them by the Qi family's children. She was referring to Qi Song. Since Qi Song was here, Qi Yuanlong and Qi Liangkai were probably here as well. Although she didn't know what they were doing here, this was Qi Li's home. Out of curiosity, she walked in first. Jiang Hai also walked in. After changing into slippers, the two walked into the hall. As soon as they walked in, they saw the situation in the hall. There were a total of 9 people in the hall. It was very lively. There were 4 men and 5 women. Among them, the ones sitting on the main sofa were Jiang Hai's mother-in-law and 2 sisters-in-law. The other people were sitting next to them. But judging from the attitude of Qi Jie and Qi Ye, they obviously didn't care about these relatives. At this time, Qi Ye was fiddling with the tea, but she wasn't drinking it for others. She was drinking it herself. As for Qi Jie, she put her 2 straight legs on the coffee table in front of her. She was half lying on the sofa playing with her mobile phone. When she heard the footsteps, she couldn't help but raise her head. After seeing Jiang Hai, she smiled. She knew that Jiang Hai was here. She couldn't make any waves here. When they saw Jiang Hai, the other 6 people's faces didn't look too good. Especially Qi Jingtao, who was beaten by me. When he saw Jiang Hai walk in, he subconsciously shrank back. Oh, it's so lively. Uncle, why did third uncle think of coming to our house today? Looking at the situation in the room, Qi Li couldn't help but smile, and say with a strong disdain in her eyes. She knew the situation of these 2 families. Since they were driven out of the Qi group by Jiang Hai, the shareholders' lives were quite miserable. A few of them got the money before they went bankrupt. This was because they used their status as shareholders of the Qi group to borrow a lot of money from banks or loan sharks. In the past, the Qi Group was there to support them, and the annual dividends and interest were enough. These people didn't dare to come and force them to pay back the money. But after they were no longer shareholders, it was hard to say. There were also some who had side businesses. In the past, they used their status as shareholders of the Qi Group to suppress their peers, or had any conflicts with the government. Now they were all back, just like how Jiang Hai wanted to buy oil futures at the beginning. No matter how much money you had to have the ability to protect yourself first. The status as a shareholder of the Qi Group was the best protection. For example, Jiang Hai's biggest protection now was his status as a shareholder of Google. Therefore, there were less than 3 people whose shares were bought by Jiang Hai in the past, who could enjoy the new year this year. Qi Song and Qi Yuanlong's situation was slightly better than these people, but it was not much better. Although Qi Song had lost his position as a shareholder of Qi Enterprise, it was not considered a serious injury to him. At most, it could be considered as an internal injury, which was quite painful. But then, he knew that he was unlucky. His main business was some peripheral supply business. With his status as a shareholder of the Qi Group, he had many factories under his name. These factories were all dedicated to the Qi Group, although there was no mention of purposely raising the price or selling shoddy products. At least these factories relied on the Qi Group to make money. Now that he was no longer a shareholder of the Qi Group, Jiang Hai directly asked the departments under him to buy from other factories. The cost was lower and the quality was better. Because of this, Qi Song's vitality was greatly damaged. Last year, he had earned 800 million in dividends at the end of the year. It wasn't just the Qi Group. His factories were the biggest. But this year he lost 60 million. In other words, after Jiang Hai took away his shares this year, he lost 60 million in just a few months. His net loss was about 400 million. When this figure came out, he was hospitalized. It was just the day before yesterday. And Qi Yuanlong was not as good as Qi Song. No matter what, Qi Song still had a business, but Qi Yuanlong had nothing. His main income was the dividends from the Qi Group, some of his own money in the company, and some of the filial piety from the managers who relied on him. But now that his shares were gone, his dividends were gone, the money in his hands in the branch was gone, and the people who relied on him were all kicked out of the company. He was now penniless. Of course, he still had some savings in the bank. But his family had always been extravagant. Now they had to rely on their savings to run out. He couldn't bear it. So after knowing that Qi Song was hospitalized, he went to take a look and made an appointment. After Qi Song was discharged, he planned to visit the Qi family. Although they had lost, they could still take advantage of their seniority. Compared to money and status, what was face? So they came today. Qi Song still came with his son, Qi Liangkai, and Qi Yuanlong also came with his son, daughter-in-law, and wife. But these people were used to being arrogant. They didn't know whether it was because they wanted to strike first, or because they were used to being arrogant. As soon as they came, they said arrogantly to Qi Li's mother, "Your daughter is a good daughter. Your son-in-law is simply a bastard. He took my shares. I'm telling you, return my shares to me immediately." After hearing this, the group of people in the Qi family was stunned. They had seen shameless people before, but they had never seen such shameless people. Just when the two sides were in a deadlock, Jiang Hai and Qi Li came back. Seeing them enter the house, Qi Jia and Qi Ye completely ignored them. Although they also had shares of the Qi Group, they had never cared about it. Now they just handed it over to Jiang Hai. "Qi Li and you, we're here to take back our things." Seeing Jiang Hai and Qi Li coming in, the group of people here looked quite embarrassed, especially when they saw Jiang Hai. It was this guy who had caused them to be so miserable. "Your things? What are your things? Does our family owe you anything?" Hearing Qi Song's words, Qi Li smiled disdainfully, then walked over and sat next to her mother. Qi Li's mother, who was originally at a loss, saw her daughter coming over and stopped talking. Now, Qi Li was naturally in charge of this family. "Don't play dumb with us. We're talking about our family's shares. You swallowed them just like that. Aren't you going to give us some explanation?" At this time, Qi Zhengtao, who had been hiding in the back, came out and shouted loudly, After all, in his opinion, the Qi group should be his. Now Qi Li and Jiang Hai not only took over the Qi group that originally belonged to him, but also swallowed the shares that originally belonged to him. What was this called? This was called usurping the throne. Forgive him, he was really not very smart. Swallowed. Sorry, I seem to have heard someone farting. I remember that I bought it with money. Do you want to see the contract? Chapter 934. I'm a very traditional woman. When my husband is still alive, I naturally have to listen to my husband. When my husband is no longer alive, I have to listen to my son and daughter. Jiang Hai is my son-in-law, just like my son. Therefore, his words and decisions also represent my decisions. Looking at Qi Song, Qi Li's mother stood firmly on Jiang Hai's side this time. This was because she was not related to Qi Song and Qi Yuanlong. If Qi Li's father was still alive, Jiang Hai would not have to worry about this matter. However, Qi Li's father was not around, so this matter was decided by Qi Li's mother. It did not matter. The reason why she made concessions a few years ago was that Qi Li had not yet secured her position. Therefore, she needed to make them behave, so that Qi Li could have more time. However, Jiang Hai had descended from the heavens and directly swept all the internal threats out of the company. Thus it had nothing to do with Qi Song and Qi Yuanlong. She smiled at them because she had taught them well. If they wanted to pester endlessly, sorry, she was not in charge. This is your attitude. Seeing that Qi Li's mother in front of them had spoken, Qi Song and the others were stunned. Qi Song pointed at the people in front of him with a trembling hand and roared with a face full of unwillingness. It should be known that Qi Song and Qi Yuanlong both coveted the Qi group. In Qi Yuanlong's opinion, the company should be like the Song dynasty. Song Taizu was dead, so his younger brother, who was still in his prime, should inherit the company. Moreover, this was the Hua dynasty, where males were preferred over females. Since he had a son and Qi Li was a daughter, then this company should be inherited by his son, because it was a tradition. It was inevitable that the company would only be passed down to males and not females. It had to be said that he was thinking too much. On the other hand, Qi Song had always thought that the reason why Qi Li's father was able to come out was because he had brought him to the capital to do business. In the end, Qi Song did not rise, but Qi Li's father did. It was only because Qi Li's father had taken advantage of him that the Qi group should belong to him, not just a little bit of shares. With such a perverted mentality, the two of them believed that the Qi family should be theirs. Shameless people were truly invincible. No matter what people do, they have to ask why. When Qi Li's father died, he clearly had a daughter. Moreover, the daughter had grown up and could inherit the company. Why should it be passed to your son? Just because you said that you gave birth to a son? If Qi Li's father knew about this, he would probably jump out from the underworld. Your son is not his son. Why should he give the company to you? As for Qi Song, he was even more shameless. He didn't have the ability and didn't have the pressure to start a company. In the end, someone else had done it, and he wanted to take advantage of it. Who do you think you are? Qi Yuanlong was still considered a blood relative. You were just a cousin who had been separated from him since the previous generation. How could you have the nerve to come out and say such things? However, the problem now was that the two of them were so shameless. They just thought that you owed them, so this was theirs. Therefore, people's hearts could never be satisfied. These guys were really not good people. This is our attitude. If you are here because you are relatives and want to come over for the new year, then everything is fine. If not, the door is over there. I won't see you off. Hearing Qi Song's words, Jiang Hai also said with a smile, Who do you think you are? Do you have the right to speak here? This is the Qi family's business. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Qi Song's son, Qi Liangkai, who had been silent all this time, finally couldn't help but look at Jiang Hai with a sullen face. It is indeed not appropriate for a son-in-law like me to intervene in the Qi family's business. However, the problem now is that you are talking about the Qi family's business. I am the biggest shareholder of the Qi family. So do you think this matter has something to do with me? Looking at Qi Liangkai, Jiang Hai also gave tit for tat, and said to him without any courtesy. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Qi Liangkai choked for a moment. This is troublesome. F***ck, why are you so arrogant? Do you believe that I will burn your house down for you? Seeing that Jiang Hai had made everyone speechless, Qi Jingtao couldn't stand it anymore. He had a bad temper, so he shouted on the spot. However, when they heard his words, the faces of both sides were a little ugly. Running to someone else's house during the new year, and saying that you want to burn your house down. Hee. This is not talking about business, but looking for trouble. After Qi Jia heard this, she also put her phone aside. She also knew martial arts. Looking at Qi Jingtao, she was ready to teach him a lesson. Seeing her like this, Jiang Hai also coughed. It was better for him to say this. You can do whatever you want. You smoke, so you should have a lighter in your pocket. You can light it. It's just a villa. You should know a little about my financial resources. I can buy 10,000 villas like this. Of course, it's a pity to light it up. As a reward, you can spend the rest of your life in prison. Don't worry. If I say you will spend the rest of your life, you will spend the rest of your life. Looking at Qi Jingtao, Jiang Hai's eyes narrowed, and then he said indifferently. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, the three people from Qi Yuanlong's family couldn't help but tense up. Braggart 13. If you have the ability, you can catch me. If you have the ability, you can kill me. Come on, kill me. Let's see if you dare. However, among these three people, Qi Jingtao was clearly not included. When this guy heard Jiang Hai's words, he was even more stubborn. He straightened his neck and shouted there. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai looked at him with a smile. You first tell me, why don't I dare? You can tell me, do I not have the ability, or do I not have the money? Looking at Qi Jingtao, Jiang Hai couldn't help but laugh. This ruffian look wasn't something that an average person could learn. You. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Qi Jingtao was also stunned for a moment. He knew that Jiang Hai was ruthless. He also knew that Jiang Hai was rich. He naturally also knew that Jiang Hai's influence was quite big. Even the third generation of the Red family didn't dare to touch him. It could be seen that his influence in the country was also not small. Not to mention, he was now a major shareholder of the Qi group. Even if it was just this identity, if he told the judge or something, he could stay in prison for the rest of his life. Suddenly, he thought that Jiang Hai seemed to be able to do it. If you have the guts, then do it. See how everyone looks at you. However, since he had already come here, it was not his style to admit defeat like this. Looking at Jiang Hai, he continued to straighten his neck and shout. You idiot, I've already done it. Why would I care about how others look at me? What's more, my business is in the United States. I only come back a few days a year. Why would anyone go against me because of you? He shook his head in amusement. He really didn't know what this guy's brain was made of. Why was he like a child? Had he just entered junior high school? Thinking about it, it was probably the same. You. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Qi Jingtao was really at a loss. If he had a temper now, he would really go and set the house on fire. However, if he set the house on fire, thinking about staying in prison for the rest of his life, he would. Hey Jiang Hai, we're all family. You're being too harsh with your words. Jingtao has been spoiled by us all these years. He's a little agitated. Don't take it to heart. At this moment, Zhang Yu, who had been sitting next to them, spoke up. Jiang Hai had introduced Zhang Yu to him. She was Qi Yuanlong's wife. Of course, she was not the first wife. Counting her age, she was only 3 years older than Qi Li. She used to be a third-rate celebrity. She always dressed up gorgeously and was quite good-looking. Otherwise, she would not have been able to charm the old pervert Qi Yuanlong. Naturally, she did not follow Qi Yuanlong for love or anything like that. She was only interested in money. However, now that Qi Yuanlong had no money, she was also very anxious. In fact, she was the one who chose to join forces with Qi Song from the beginning. When Jiang Hai first came here and met these two families, Qi Song and Qi Yuanlong were clearly not in the same group. At that time, Qi Song was still within Zhangwu, while Qi Wulong was more neutral and did not participate in anything. When they met for the second time, the two of them got together. This woman named Zhang Yu had contributed a lot. Now that the negotiations were about to collapse, she could not sit still. If Qi Yuanlong was really kicked out of the Qi family, she would not be able to accept it. I say, sister-in-law, look at Yuanlong. He's not young anymore. He values his reputation very much. Most importantly, our family doesn't have much income. We can't just sit there and wait. Seeing that Jiang Hai's side was not easy to deal with, Zhang Yu looked at Qi Li's mother. At this time, the man's words were too harsh. It was time for her to step in. These days, Yuanlong has been sighing at home every day after losing his shares. He can't talk about his elder brother. I also know that Yuanlong did some things wrong. But after all, Yuanlong is his elder brother's biological younger brother, isn't he? Seeing that she had softened her tone, Qi Li's mother's gaze was not so resolute. Zhang Yu continued to speak. Sister-in-law, I really want these shares. At worst, I'll return the money I received and treat it as if I bought them again. What do you think? Seeing that Qi Li's mother's gaze was a little evasive, Qi Yuanlong was not stupid, and immediately spoke up. At this time, Qi Song and Qi Liangkai did not say anything. This was their goal. Although it seemed that they had lost face, as long as they could get back the shares, this was the most important thing. Losing face could be earned in the future. But if the shares were gone, it was really gone. As long as Qi Yuanlong tore a hole here, Qi Li's mother would not be able to refuse his family's share. Third uncle, it's not that we don't want to sell it to you, but we're afraid that you can't afford it now. However, before Qi Li's mother could say anything, Qi Li had already said it with a smile. Then, she looked at her third uncle with a somewhat playful gaze. This third uncle was really taking advantage of her. Want to buy back the shares at the original price? It had to be said that they were dreaming. Chapter 935. What? Do you still want to earn our money? Hearing Qi Li's words, Qi Song's complexion instantly changed. His face was gloomy as he spoke. In his opinion, Jiang Hai and Qi Li should have given them the shares for free. They should have knelt down and begged for the shares. If they didn't want it, then they should have knelt down and begged for it. Of course, uncle, are you still dreaming? Hearing Qi Song's words, Qi Li raised her eyebrows. Is he crazy about money? Few, tell me, how much do you want? I'll tell you, but don't go too far. Qi Song glared at Qi Li and said angrily. But hearing his words, Qi Li smiled disdainfully. What do you mean by going too far? She didn't think she was going too far. At present, the Qi Group has already been delisted. According to the listing price, and the price of the 4 companies that have been merged into the Qi Group, the current market price of the Qi Group is 71.7 billion renminbi. I won't cheat you. According to the market price, 1% of the shares is 717 million renminbi. However, because you are my relatives, I won't cheat you. Now that I've said it, I won't sell less than 10% of the shares, and it's only valid for now. Now, if you take out 7,170 million renminbi, you are still shareholders of the Qi Group, so you can't take it out. Sorry, the door is over there. Looking at Qi Song and the others in front of her, Qi Li said very calmly. Hearing Qi Li's words, everyone's face changed instantly. How could they take out 71.1 billion yuan? Now, is this guy joking? And 71.7 billion yuan? What the hell is this? Since Jiang Hai got the shares of the Qi Group, Qi Li had been preparing for the delisting. The delisting was completed before the new year. Now the Qi Group was a completely private enterprise. It didn't sell shares, and there were no extra shareholders. All the property rights were fixed. Of course, this also prevented other forces from interfering. The Qi Group also became the sole owner of Jiang Hai. Then Qi Li asked for Jiang Hai's opinion, and merged the 4 Western steak restaurants opened by Qi Li and Jiang Hai into the Qi Group. Once the 4 tax-free Western restaurants were merged into the Qi Group, the value of the Qi Group instantly increased by 1/3. Originally, because of the integration, the market value had increased a lot. At this time, it broke through the sky. Before the new year, the Lu Group's stock price had exceeded 70 billion yuan. It looked good in China, but in fact, it was average internationally. Compared to the companies in the United States that had hundreds of billions of dollars, which were converted into trillions of yuan, the Qi Group was actually insignificant. As for the truly big companies in the country, they were all owned by those countries. The private Qi Group was actually not bad. At present, the price of the Qi Group after the merger of the 4 steak restaurants was adjusted as follows. Jiang Hai's original 23% shares became 37%, and he was currently the largest shareholder of the Qi Group. Qi Li's shares were 22.6%, Lu Jie and Qi Ye each accounted for 8.2%, and Qi Li's mother, Jiang Hai's mother-in-law, accounted for 15.3%. Jiang Hai's family alone accounted for 91.3% of the Qi Group's shares. Now, if Qi Song and Qi Yuanlong could really sell for 14 billion yuan, it didn't matter to give them 20%. After all, this was a very fair price. However, after hearing Qi Li's words, Qi Song and Qi Yuanlong's faces were gloomy. Even Qi Zhengtao and Qi Liangkai looked at Qi Li in front of them with some surprise. In their opinion, Qi Li was crazy about money. 7 billion? When they left, they only received less than 2 billion yuan. Now they wanted 7 billion yuan back. Qi Li was not selling shares, she was robbing money. Qi Li, you've really improved. Scamming money, scamming your uncles. Do you still have the face? Do you still know that we are your elders? Do you still know that your surname is Qi? Qi Song was so angry that he laughed. He pointed his trembling finger at Qi Li in front of him, and said angrily. He never thought that Qi Li would be so ruthless as to directly ask for 7 billion yuan. Moreover, it was cash. Where would they get the cash? As mentioned before, Qi Yuanlong was a sitting duck. In the past few months, he had been spending like before. It could be said that he had already spent half of the money that Jiang Hai gave him. Now, not to mention 7 billion, he didn't even have 700 million yuan. This time, he came here to act shamelessly. He wanted to use his face to ask for the shares. As for Qi Song, his total family assets were 7 billion yuan. However, because of the huge impact, his cash was basically invested in his own factory to maintain the normal operation of the factory. How could he have 7 billion yuan now? It would be good if he had 70 million yuan in cash that he could use. 7 billion yuan? How could Qi Li say that? Don't talk nonsense if you don't understand. If you think that I'm overselling, you can find someone to calculate it yourself. I think LVC should know how much the Qi family is worth now. If you have money, take it out now and give me 10% of the shares. If you don't have money and want to stay for the new year, stay obediently. If you don't want to leave, it's that simple. Seeing that Qi Song was still unwilling to give up, Qi Li said impatiently. Hearing Qi Li's words, Qi Song and Qi Yuanlong's words were blocked. Look, they're quarreling again. They're all relatives. I say, Xiaoli, can you? Seeing that the situation was getting out of control again, Qi Li's third aunt, Zhang Yu, couldn't help but appear again and wanted to smooth things over. However, before she finished speaking, Jiang Hai had already stretched out his hand and motioned for her to stop. Third aunt, right? Money in one hand and shares in the other. It's a fair transaction. We're all relatives. Don't say that you owe me or give me face. The reason why Qi Li is willing to sell is because the few of you in front of her are her relatives. According to our original statement, these shares would rather rot than be sold. Hearing Jiang Hai's resolute words, Zhang Yu also smiled brightly and swallowed the rest of her words. For a moment, the situation was really a little awkward. Qi Yuanlong's face showed some regret. He knew that Jiang Hai's words just now meant that he had no fate with the Qi family. If he had known this would happen, why did he seek death in the first place? Why did he want to occupy the Qi family? Wasn't he doing a good job as his third uncle? He could go out and indulge in debauchery all day long. And if something happened, there would be someone to clean up his mess for him. How could he be so obsessed to think that his son, who could not do anything but spoiled everything, could inherit the Qi family? Although he was a man, but now it seemed that his son was not just a little bit worse than Qi Li. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but sigh. This time it was really troublesome. On the other hand, Qi Song's face was livid. Unlike Qi Yuanlong's regret, he had nothing to regret. This was because from the beginning, his goal was to occupy the Qi family. Now that he didn't succeed, There was nothing he could do. Winner takes all. When he couldn't even keep his shares, he had already lost completely. Let's go. Looking at Jiang Hai and Qi Li's tough attitude, Qi Song waved his hand and stood up directly. He walked out with Qi Liangkai. His relatives had come to an end today. Qi Yuanlong glanced at Jiang Hai and his family in front of him and couldn't help but stand up and sigh. Sister-in-law, if I've done anything wrong in the past, I'll apologize in advance. Let's go. After saying this to Qi Li's mother, Qi Yuanlong also left with his family. LVC, do you have any thoughts of returning to the Qi family? However, when they were about to walk out of the door, Qi Li thought for a moment. Her third uncle was indeed quite hateful, but he was her third uncle after all. Therefore, at the last moment, she was a little soft-hearted. However, she was very unwilling to let Qi Yuanlong or Qi Zhengtao, who were ambitious but not talented, return to the Qi family. However, she could consider LVC. Father. After hearing Qi Li's words, LVC, who had been silent all this time, glanced at Qi Yuanlong and her husband Qi Zhengtao. Hearing LVC call him father, Qi Yuanlong also sighed. LVC will go after the new year. After saying this, Qi Yuanlong stepped forward and walked forward. He knew that this was a benefit from Qi Li. Although after LVC went, there would definitely be no filial piety. But if something really happened, LVC would be able to take care of the Qi family. This was considered as Qi Li leaving a back door for their family. Thinking of this, Qi Yuanlong shook his head. He was really embarrassed and then walked out of the door. Seeing that these uninvited guests had been sent away, Qi Jie and Qi Ye couldn't help but look at each other. In addition to joy in their eyes, there was also a trace of fear. It should be known that in Jiang Hai's family, they were on equal footing with Ai Xiaoxi. There was no difference in strength between the two groups of forces. But if Qi Li, the legal wife, really came today, they had also seen her methods. They were afraid that when the time came, their status would be lowered. Of course, they were not worried that Qi Li would drive them away. After all, with Jiang Hai's protection, Qi Li would not dare to do so. Moreover, they were sisters. However, with such a big shot above them, their lives would not be easy. It's the new year and something like this happened. Sai, let's not talk about it. Come, Jiang Hai, sit down. Have you eaten breakfast? I'm here to see you. I haven't seen you for a while. You're getting stronger and stronger. Seeing that the atmosphere was still not very good after the guests left, Qi Li's mother could not help but laugh. She took the initiative to adjust the atmosphere in the room. Mom, I eat beef every day. Naturally, my body is as strong as a cow. Hearing his mother-in-law's words, Jiang Hai also laughed and made a muscular gesture. Looking at him, everyone laughed. This was more like the new year. Chapter 936. As the atmosphere at home gradually became lively, Jiang Hai and Qi Li returned to their original state again. They chatted together, watched TV and so on. However, Jiang Hai, Qi Jie, and Qi Ye were somewhat awkward. Yes, it would be strange if they weren't awkward. Jiang Hai could only laugh at this. Nothing happened for the day. In the evening, the whole family watched TV together and made dumplings with Zheng Xiuyi. They stayed until the end of the year. Although the recent New Year's Gala was getting more and more boring, the New Year's Gala was more like a ceremony. If they were alone, it didn't matter. But if the whole family was together, then they really had to go and watch the New Year's Gala. The programs on TV weren't good, but they were chatting and laughing. It was also quite good. After working until midnight, they went outside to set off a string of firecrackers. Because Jiang Hai's mourning period had passed 3 years this year, and Qi Li's mourning period had also passed 3 years, there was no need to ban the New Year's couplets and firecrackers. Jiang Hai himself wasn't particularly interested in setting off firecrackers. He just wanted to join in the fun. With the sound of the firecrackers, it indicated that the past year had come to an end, and a new year had arrived. In the evening, Jiang Hai naturally went back to the room with Qi Li to sleep. Because it was a little late tonight, there was no extra activity. After washing up, Jiang Hai hugged Qi Li and went to sleep. The next morning, it was the first day of the new year. Qi Li's family didn't have the habit of New Year's greeting, so it was as usual. It was just a very plain day, watching TV, playing on the computer, and surfing the internet. The day passed quickly. However, at night, Jiang Hai was not so honest. After dealing with Qili, he went to Qi Jie and Qi Ye's place. After all, they had been separated for a while. And to be honest, it was inexplicably exciting. The next day, on the second day of Chinese New Year, Jiang Hai and Qili went back to his villa. The third day of Chinese New Year was supposed to be the time to go back to her parents' house. But Jiang Hai had already said that he would go to Feng Yunshan's house on the third day. So today, Qili went back to her mother's house by herself. Actually, Qili didn't need to go to her mother's house today, because she would spend the new year there. It didn't matter whether she went back to her mother's home or not. But after all, there was still some estrangement between her and Jiang Hai's family. When Jiang Hai was here, it was fine. But when Jiang Hai wasn't here, she felt that she was a little redundant. These girls were more or less afraid of her. So she didn't have any intention to do anything. So in the morning, Jiang Hai went to Feng Yunshan's house. And she went back to her mother's house. Of course, in order to appease the empress, Jiang Hai deliberately sent her home first. After she arrived home, Jiang Hai drove to the nearby supermarket to buy some gifts. He had to admit that the new year wasn't too important in China now. This could be seen from the shops. A long time ago, Jiang Hai remembered that when he was young, about 10 years ago, at that time, he was already in junior high school and had some spare money. His parents didn't take away his money that year. So during the new year, he remembered that it was the 5th day of the new year. And he wanted to go to the bookstore to buy some comic books. But on the 5th day of the new year, Bing City was quiet. He waited for about half an hour before a bus came out. He went to Xinhua bookstore, but it was still closed. He was hungry and wanted to eat something, but no restaurants were open. It was the new year, and he couldn't even have a good meal. Of course, those top-notch restaurants were still open, but he couldn't afford it. In the end, he found a noodle restaurant that was still open. He ate some noodles and went home. Although there was nothing on the streets at that time, the New Year atmosphere was still there. Now that it was the new year, it was really too easy to buy things. Whether it was restaurants, supermarkets, or some private fruit stores, they were all open. This was incomparable to before. Since it was Jiang Hai's first visit, he had to prepare a lot of things. Before he came, he had asked Feng Yunshan what his parents liked. After all, he was married in the past, so he knew the basic 3-piece set. A carton of good cigarettes and 2 bottles of good wine. When he went to Qili's house, he got this set. But now, he had money, and he changed it to a carton of good cigarettes and 2 cartons of good wine. He didn't buy the best ones. The cigarettes were soft Zhonghua, and the wine were flying Maotai and Wuliangya. Although in the eyes of ordinary people, these things were already very good, in Jiang Hai's eyes, these things were really not good. Not to mention other things, just his red wine alone. Even if the lowest price was $800, it was nearly 5,000 renminbi. Ordinary bottles of flying Maotai and Wuliangya didn't have such a price. A bottle of Maotai was about 1,000 renminbi, and Wuliangya was more than 800 renminbi. There were 6 bottles in one bottle. Jiang Hai's 2 bottles of red wine were equivalent to these 2 cartons of wine. In addition to these 3 cartons of things, Jiang Hai also specially brought 2 bottles of his own red wine, some beef, and the best quality abalones that he sent after refrigeration. These abalones were the super best in his manner. Basically, each of them was a 2-headed abalone. They could only be bigger than this, not smaller. Even if they were more than the market caddy, they couldn't withstand Jiang Hai's spirit, right? The quality of things was more important than the quantity. But these things were already quite a lot. Driving Qili's BMW, Jiang Hai brought these things to Feng Yunshan's home community. Driving far away, he saw that it was snowing heavily. Feng Yunshan was waiting for Jiang Hai outside the community at this time. Their community was considered a good community among the mid-range in Bingcheng. Naturally, the security of the community was also good. It was not so easy for foreign vehicles to enter. They needed to be brought in by people in the community. Seeing Jiang Hai's BMW, although she knew that it was Qi Li's, Feng Yunshan still greeted him with a smile. Looking at Jiang Hai, who stopped the car and walked out, she plunged into Jiang Hai's arms. Hee hee, did you miss me? Looking up at Jiang Hai, Feng Yunchen said with a smile. Just a little bit. Hearing Feng Yunchen's words, Jiang Hai also gestured. But he only got a pink fist in return. After fooling around for a while, Feng Yunchen took Jiang Hai to the guard. After registering, they drove the car in. Parking the car downstairs of Feng Yunchen's home, Jiang Hai got out of the car and felt that someone was looking at him. But when he looked up, that feeling disappeared. He thought that it might be the residents of this building. Then Jiang Hai and Feng Yunchen began to move the gifts prepared by Jiang Hai out of the car one by one. From time to time, some neighbors passed by and looked at the gifts prepared by Jiang Hai. Some of them secretly clicked their tongues. Indeed, for ordinary people, these gifts were indeed too expensive. But looking at Jiang Hai's BMW, these people were silent. One by one, they were stunned and looked at Jiang Hai. After moving everything, Jiang Hai also locked the car and walked into the corridor with Feng Yunchen. Feng Yunchen's home was bought not long ago. It was about 4 or 5 years ago, so it was an elevator apartment. But although it was an elevator apartment, Feng Yunchen's parents didn't like to live too high up. According to Feng Yunchen, once her parents went to her aunt's house to play. As a result, her aunt's house lived on the 31st floor. The key was that the elevator was broken. They thought that since they were already here, they would just climb up. After climbing up that time, her parents never mentioned the problem of living on a high floor again. So when she decided to buy a house, her parents chose this 4-story one. According to them, even if the elevator was broken, they didn't have to climb too high, right? Soon the elevator came to the 4th floor. Jiang Hai also walked out with several large boxes. Feng Yunchen was only responsible for taking the wine, abalone and beef. The 3 boxes were Jiang Hai's. With Jiang Hai's current strength, the 3 boxes were not heavy, but it would definitely block his vision. He staggered all the way to the door. Just as he knocked on the door was opened from the inside. "Hey, you're here. It seems that you're here. You brought so many things. You're too polite." When the door opened, a middle-aged woman's face appeared from inside. She looked at Jiang Hai. Her face was about to wrinkle, as she said with a smile, "Hello, Auntie. It's my first time here. I don't know what you like, so I just bought some. Some of them are produced at my place." Hearing the middle-aged woman's words, Jiang Hai also put down the box and looked at her with a smile. He naturally knew that this was Feng Yunchen's mother, because he had seen her at a parent-teacher conference when he was in school. Although he didn't have much of an impression of her, after all, he and Feng Yunchen didn't have much interaction at the beginning. However, he was still familiar with her when they met. Come in, come in." Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Feng Yunchen's mother also smiled and let Jiang Hai in. Of course, before Jiang Hai came in, he also moved everything in. Then Feng Yunchen led Jiang Hai to the living room. At this time in the living room, a man with a slightly dark face was sitting there watching TV. When he saw Jiang Hai coming over, he also stood up and forced a smile on his face, but he didn't say anything. "This is my dad. You should have seen him." Feng Yunchen was obviously very satisfied that this man could squeeze out a smile on his face. After saying this to Jiang Hai with a smile, she took Jiang Hai's arm and took him to sit on the sofa next to him. "Little Jiang, tsk, I saw you at that time. You were not a good student at that time. I often heard that your class teacher criticized you at the parent-teacher conference. But who would have thought that it would be like this? The troublemaker from the beginning is now promising." Sitting on the sofa, looking at Jiang Hai, Feng Yunchen's father couldn't help but say with some emotion. Chapter 937. "Ugh, hee hee. That was because I wasn't sensible at the beginning. Now I guess I still can't learn, haha." Hearing Feng Yunchen's father's words, Jiang Hai touched his nose awkwardly and said with a smile, "Everyone has their own ambitions. If you learned well at the beginning, you wouldn't be who you are today." Hearing Jiang Hai's words that were not hypocritical, Feng Yunchen's father also said with a smile. In fact, he was basically satisfied with Jiang Hai. He was tall. Although he wasn't very handsome, he wasn't bad either. He was just an ordinary person. His family was quite rich. If Feng Yunshan could really marry such a person, it would be really good. But unfortunately, he was already married, and the other party was the boss of a large group. He couldn't get a divorce. It was a pity. Before Jiang Hai came, Feng Yunshan more or less told her parents that she could talk about Jiang Hai's situation. Of course, she didn't say everything. What she said was relatively good. For example, Jiang Hai's current family background, how much he could earn in a year, his influence in the United States, and of course, more importantly, his relationship with Qili. How hard Jiang Hai was at the beginning. He was with Qili. Qili gave him money, but she didn't treat him as her man. She went to the company on the second day of marriage, and so on. But after all, Qili was kind to Jiang Hai, so Jiang Hai couldn't get a divorce. Of course, this was the situation a long time ago. Now, how many people were in Jiang Hai's family? Feng Yunshan deliberately avoided it. It was better not to talk about this thing. So although she was a mistress, Feng Yunshan's parents' opposition was much lower than at the beginning. Now it seemed that Jiang Hai was also a successful person, and he was not bad. He could also be entrusted. Looking at his appearance, Feng Yunshan wouldn't be bullied by him. This was the most important thing. So her father, who had always been at odds with Feng Yunshan, was also kind to Jiang Hai. Come, clean up and get ready to eat. While Jiang Hai and Feng Yunshan's father were chatting, Feng Yunshan's mother had almost finished cooking. People in the Northeast paid attention to a good New Year. So they basically cooked 6, 8, 10, 12 dishes. Even if there were only one person in the family, there would be 6 dishes. This had nothing to do with wastage. This was a habit of Bing City's people. Today, Feng Yunshan's mother also had such extravagance. Although there were only 4 people, they cooked 8 dishes. Braised carp meant that there would be more every year. Braised pig trotters meant that there would be a lot of money. There were also many home-cooked cold dishes, stewed pork ribs, fried chicken wings, braised pork knuckles, stir-fried cauliflower, stir-fried zucchini. These 8 dishes filled the table. After Jiang Hai and the rest sat down, they were a little polite and started to eat. But because Jiang Hai drove here, he didn't drink. He just chatted at the table and talked nonsense with Feng Yunshan's father. Feng Yunshan's father was still very curious about the United States. In fact, it wasn't only Feng Yunshan's father who was curious. After knowing that Jiang Hai's business was in the United States, most people were very curious. After all, it was a foreign land, so it was inevitable that they would be curious. Regarding their curiosity, Jiang Hai naturally talked about it. At the same time, he also invited them to come and play if they have time. In this regard, they just smiled. Sitting for more than 10 hours on a plane was not a good thing. As for the first-class cabin, they were not that extravagant. One must know that a first-class ticket was enough to buy a relatively poor car. 2 tickets, a round trip, would cost more than 200,000 yuan. Just thinking about it made their hearts ache. After Feng Yunshan's mother heard about the price 2 days ago, she complained about Feng Yunshan. Why did she come back when it was so expensive? It was too expensive. Just thinking about it made her feel a little nervous. It was more than 100,000 renminbi. Just as Jiang Hai and Feng Yunshan's parents were chatting, Qili couldn't stay at home. This was because her mother had been asking her if she had any children. This matter couldn't be rushed. So in order to escape her mother's interrogation, Feng Yunshan looked at her 2 sisters and came up with a plan. When she was in the capital, she naturally took a bath every day, but it was always at home. Now that she was back, she still wanted to go to the bathtub to take a bath. Of course, the bathtub she wanted to go to couldn't just be a small bathtub. She definitely wanted to go to a big bathtub. There were many big bathtubs in Bing City. Of course, there were all kinds of bathtubs, such as bathing, massage, steaming, eating, playing, and of course, there were some special services that only men knew about. But the latter was only one of them. There were very few bathtubs that specialized in this nature. There were many women who went to such bathtubs. Qili naturally went to such bathtubs when she was young, so there was nothing to be shy about. But now that she was back, it was meaningless for her to go alone. It just so happened that she could go with her 2 sisters today. After talking to her mother, Qili left home with Qi Jie and Qi Ya. She drove her family's car and went to a big bathtub nearby. Although Chi-Jia and Chi-Li didn't get along well, after all, they weren't young anymore. Half of the blood in their bodies was the same. So, the atmosphere in the car was really good. After chatting and laughing, Chi-Li had already driven to the bathtub nearby. On the third day of the new year, there were many people who came here to play. There were many people in the hall. Some came with friends, some came with family members, and some came with classmates. It seemed that there were a lot of people, but fortunately, this bathtub was big enough. It wasn't difficult to arrange these people. After Chi-Li queued for a while, it was their turn. After Chi-Li went to buy the tickets, they went into the female bathroom. After changing their clothes, the three slender figures naturally attracted the attention of many women. It had to be admitted that the current figures of these three girls were really explosive. It wasn't only men who couldn't stand it. Of course, the only man who had seen it was Jiang Hai. The women who had seen them were also envious, jealous, and hateful. But in the face of such gazes, the three of them seemed very calm. After changing their clothes, the three of them went to wash their hair first. Then, they went to sit in the main hot spring of the bathtub. Soaking in the hot spring was really comfortable. As soon as they sat down, the warm water filled their breasts. It was really good. Those who had not soaked in the hot spring before were strongly recommended to give it a try. After sitting down, Chi-Li and the others also slowly washed themselves. Let me tell you, this hot spring is actually not good. There is a natural hot spring in your brother-in-law's manor. It is more comfortable to bathe there. While getting water on her body, Chi-Li said to Chi-Jia and Chi-Ya. Hearing her words, Chi-Jia and Chi-Ya looked at each other and said nothing. They naturally knew that there was a natural hot spring in Jiang Hai's manor. They had bathed in it much more than Chi-Li, but they couldn't say it now. And, what's wrong? Maybe feeling that the atmosphere was not right, Chi-Li looked at Chi-Jia and Chi-Ya and asked with some doubts. Oh, nothing, I'm just curious. Didn't they say that hot springs are only found in volcanoes? Why is there a hot spring in brother-in-law's house? Hearing Chi-Li's words, Chi-Jia took the initiative to change the topic. Who knows this? I'm not a geologist. When I have time, I will take you to play. Your brother-in-law's house is still very beautiful. Chi-Li spread out her hands. How would she know where Jiang Hai's hot spring came from? She only knew that it was very comfortable to bathe in it. And that was enough. You don't know, Jiang Hai's house has a lot of fun. The beef I gave you is from Jiang Hai's house. And there is also seafood. His house is also next to the sea. It is very beautiful. Since she couldn't explain it, Chi-Li didn't explain, and changed the topic to her two sisters excitedly. Listening to Chi-Li's words, Chi-Jia and Chi-Ya looked at each other. They had no other choice but to smile awkwardly. Listening to Chi-Li bragging about their common husband, they couldn't say anything. Ahem, sister, don't brag about your husband. We know that brother-in-law is very good, but he is not our cup of tea. With a slightly embarrassed smile, Chi-Jia said to Chi-Li. Hearing that her sister, who had always been at odds with her, admitted that her husband was good, Chi-Li was very happy, and the smile on her face became brighter. After all, he is my husband, your brother-in-law. By the way, do Xiaojia and Xiaoya have boyfriends? Do you have any ideas? Looking at the appearance of her two sisters, Chi-Li asked with a smile, but after she finished speaking, Chi-Jia and Chi-Ya were stunned for a moment. My illness may relapse, I don't want to drag others down. After thinking for a while, Chi-Ya opened her mouth and said first. And yes, Xiaoya's illness is not cured yet. I still have to take care of her. Hearing Chi-Ya's words, Chi-Jia also thought for a while and said, Oh, my poor sister, don't worry. Your illness will definitely be cured. Hearing the two say this, Chi-Li couldn't help but bite her lip. She forgot that her sister's condition is not very good. However, she is still quite confident. After all, she couldn't even be exposed to the sun in the past. Now that her illness has been cured, maybe she will be cured in the future. Hearing Chi-Li's words, the two couldn't help but laugh and muddle through it. Shall we eat here or go out to eat? It's rare that all three of us sisters are here. Let's have fun today. Skipping this slightly heavy topic, Chi-Li asked her two sisters with a smile. Let's eat here. I don't know what to eat outside. Hearing that Qili finally stopped talking about this topic, Qijia and Qia also smiled. As long as these things are not mentioned, they are quite natural. After that, they didn't soak for too long. After soaking for about 10 minutes, they got up and went to take a bath. Then they went to steam themselves. After eating and playing, they prepared to go back. However, when they were putting on their clothes, Qili noticed one of Qiya's anklets. She picked it up and looked at it. Then, she looked at it with a strange expression. Chapter 938. Cough, sister, what's wrong with you? Looking at the dazed Qili holding her anklet, Qiya's heart skipped a beat for no reason. Then she walked over with a little uneasiness and looked at Qili and asked, "Oh, nothing. When did you buy this anklet? It looks pretty good." Hearing Qiya's words, Qili smiled and said to her. Hearing Qili's words, Qiya was stunned. This anklet was given to her by Jiang Hai. Is there a problem? But now, even if she really felt that there was a problem, she had to bite the bullet and pretend that there was no problem. "Oh, I bought it when Qijia and I went to Europe a while ago. It seems to be in France." According to the place of origin of this thing in her memory, Luya whispered. Since she couldn't blame Jiang Hai, she could only blame Qijia. "When did you go to Europe? Why haven't I heard of it?" Looking at Qijia, Qili's eyes flashed and asked, "Ugh, this?" Hearing Qili's interrogation, Qijia was a little flustered. After all, she was not good at lying. "It was a summit in my laboratory. I just went for a few days. Anyway, Littleya has nothing to do, so I took her with me. Is there a problem?" But fortunately at this moment, Qijia walked over while wiping her hair and said, "Don't worry." Hearing Qijia's words, Qili nodded, then put the anklet in Qiya's hand. "Such a precious thing, you have to keep it well. If you lose it, it will be troublesome." Looking at Qiya, Qili said with a smile, then put the anklet in Qiya's hand. Then she put on her clothes. As for Qiya, she also breathed a sigh of relief at this time. Then carefully looked at Qijia, but Qijia stopped her, indicating that she should not act rashly. Then she walked over and put on her clothes. Compared to when they came and took a shower just now, the atmosphere between the three sisters was a bit solemn when they went back. Qili, who was originally in a state of showing off, didn't speak at this time. Qijia and Qiya also didn't say anything. The car soon arrived at the Qi family's villa. Qijia and Qiya immediately left. After the two of them entered the house, Qili didn't go in, but directly drove back to Jiang Hai's villa. When she came back, the girls in the villa had just finished eating at this time, and were tidying up. "Delina, Marian, let me see your anklets." Seeing Qili come back with a bad expression, everyone in the house temporarily closed their mouths and looked at her carefully. "Oh." Hearing Qili's order, Delina and Marian didn't know what happened, so they just took off the anklets and handed them to Qili. Qili took the two anklets and looked at them carefully, but the more she looked, the worse her expression became. Then she returned the anklets to Delina and Marian and returned to her room. At this time, Jiang Hai was almost done eating in Feng Yunshan's house. After all, because he doesn't drink, it was quite fast to eat. Not long after, Jiang Hai had almost finished eating. Seeing that it was a little late, Jiang Hai said goodbye, and Feng Yunshan also sent him downstairs. "How was my performance today?" Looking at Feng Yunshan, Jiang Hai asked her with a smile. "Quite good." Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Feng Yunshan also said with a smile. Indeed, Jiang Hai's performance today was really good in her eyes, and she can see from the eyes of her parents that they are very satisfied with Jiang Hai. Then take advantage of this period of time to accompany them more. They don't have it easy. After a while I should be leaving. I still have something to do with the CIA. Do you want to go back to Winthrop or stay here? After eating today's meal, Jiang Hai's several tasks in his return to China were almost completed. There are only 3 months to go to Antarctica. He must go before February, and there is still some time to find the place in Antarctica. It must be known that in Antarctica, transportation is not so convenient. Therefore, it is inevitable to leave early. He is going to return to Winthrop after the 5th day of the lunar month. After that, he will meet with the CIA and go directly to Antarctica. I'll go with you. My parents are still quite healthy now, so I don't have to worry about them. If anything happens, I will take them over. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Feng Yunchen said with a smile. She did not tell Jiang Hai about her situation at home. Although Jiang Hai came over today, and she was not the only one who had to bear the pressure, she could not stay at home for too long. After all, she has been used to loneliness over the years. Now that she has Jiang Hai, she will not easily leave Jiang Hai behind. This is already her habit. Okay, then I will come and pick you up. Gently stroking Feng Yunchen's hair, Jiang Hai also said with a smile. Then, after the two said goodnight to each other, Jiang Hai got into the car, warmed up the car for a while, and drove away. Standing on the balcony of their house, watching Jiang Hai drive away, the expressions on Feng Yunchen's parents' faces were a little different. Feng Yunchen's mother was 70% surprised and 30% lonely. She was surprised because she also felt that Jiang Hai was not bad. Because they were junior high school classmates, she knew him well. Moreover, he was not too arrogant. He spoke and did things well. He was an average person, not outstanding, not too boring. He was indeed a good person, worthy of her daughter's lifelong commitment. 30% lonely because Jiang Hai was already married after all. People were greedy. Looking at Jiang Hai like this, she also thought that if her daughter had been with him earlier, would there have been a different result? On the other hand, Feng Yunchen's father was 3 parts gratified, 3 parts lonely, and 4 parts helpless. The gratification was the same as his wife's surprise. He felt that Jiang Hai was a good person. At least he would not treat his daughter badly. 30% lonely was the same. He felt that his daughter's life was really not good. And 40% helpless was also because he was powerless about the relationship between his daughter and Jiang Hai. Although he was the head of the family in name, he knew that he could not control his daughter and Jiang Hai. This was really a little helpless. When Jiang Hai's car drove away, Feng Yunchen also came back. However, the smile on her face disappeared after entering the house. She walked indifferently to her room, and Feng Yunchen's father did not call her. Feng Yunchen's mother looked at her daughter and her old man. She could not help but sigh, and then walked into the room. Jiang Hai didn't know how Feng Yunchen and her mother chatted tonight, but when he drove back, his sixth sense told him that something was going to happen. Probably, because his heart had been throbbing a little. He drove all the way back, and nothing happened. After parking the car, Jiang Hai also returned to his villa. However, as soon as he came in, Azalina and the others walked towards Jiang Hai. Their expressions were not quite right. What's wrong? Looking at their appearance, Jiang Hai asked cautiously. He really did not know what was going on. Chili just came back. Looking at her expression, cough, good luck. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Azalina whispered. Hearing what she said, Jiang Hai was even more confused. What the hell is this? It may be related to the anklet. That's all I know. Seeing Jiang Hai's expression, Azalina shrugged and said to him, then went to the living room and watched a TV series there. Looking at her appearance, Jiang Hai smacked his lips. If it's a blessing, it's not a curse. If it's a curse, it can't be avoided. Shaking his head, Jiang Hai stepped into his room on the 2nd floor. When he walked into the room, he saw that Chili was sitting on the bed, looking at the sky outside with a dull face. Although it was dark, she looked motionless. Cough, what's wrong? Why don't you go down and watch TV? Walking behind Chili, Jiang Hai slowly hugged her from behind and asked her in a low voice. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Chili did not struggle or move. What's going on between you and my sister? However, although Chili did not move, she spoke directly. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai's body couldn't help but tremble. He felt that Chili should know something. Cough this. Hearing Chili's words, Jiang Hai was at a loss. I know you won't lie. If you have something to say, just say it. Let me give you a hint. Chiya's anklet is the same as Delina's and Marian's, and the words engraved on it are also the same. After JH is the abbreviation of their names. If I'm not wrong, JH should be the abbreviation of your name, Jiang Hai. Without looking at Jiang Hai, Chili slowly explained her inference. Listening to her words, Jiang Hai couldn't help but sigh helplessly. He could only say that Chili was indeed worthy of her reputation. She could find evidence with just a few clues. And this matter was really difficult to explain. Hey, this matter is just like a TV drama. It's really strange. Glancing at Qi, Jiang Hai helplessly let go of her, and then sat behind her. His relationship with Qi Jia and Qi was really strange. Sure enough, it's you, bastard. Well, I'll give you a chance. Speak slowly. Hearing Jiang Hai admit it, Qi turned her head and punched Jiang Hai's arm. Then she sat there angrily, waiting for Jiang Hai's explanation. Seeing that she was at least willing to listen to his explanation, Jiang Hai also smiled bitterly. Then, he looked at the sky outside and slowly spoke. I met Qi Jia and Qi very early. It should be nearly 3 years. At that time, they were still called Penny and Little Ya. Looking at the sky outside, Jiang Hai also sat there and recalled with Qi. Chapter 939. Hey, what are you doing? Jiang Hai, who was sleeping in a daze, felt something strange early in the morning. After opening his eyes in a daze, he found that Qi, who was supposed to be sleeping next to him, was doing something hard. Feeling Jiang Hai's gaze when he woke up, Qi stood up directly and then straddled Jiang Hai's body. With a low moan, some indescribable things also entered the most indescribable environment. Hey, it can't be. Didn't we fight for almost the whole night last night? Looking at Qi in front of him, Jiang Hai said with some helplessness. I don't care, you bad guy, pervert, hateful bastard. You even took in my 2 sisters. My status is getting more and more unstable. I want to do as much as possible before you leave. If I wasn't the first to give birth to a child, my status with you would be getting lower and lower. Listening to Jiang Hai's words, Qi moved while patting Jiang Hai's chest, and said with a face full of anger. Hearing what she said, Jiang Hai couldn't help but stroke his forehead speechlessly. Last night, he and Qi talked about Qi Jia and Qi Ya. Qi also knew some of Jiang Hai's secrets for the first time. Of course, he didn't tell her the secret of the Dragon Balls, but he told her the secret of him being able to cure diseases. At the beginning, he and Qi Jia met mainly because of Aphrodite and the others. After Qi Jia learned about Aphrodite and the others' situation, she threatened Jiang Hai to help her treat her sisters. It wasn't Qi Ya, but Jiang Hai didn't know the identity of Qi Jia and Qi Ya at that time. Later, feelings grew over time, and the relationship between the 3 became a mess. After being counterattacked, Jiang Hai also recognized their existence, but when he went home for the New Year last year, he found out that these 2 were actually his sisters-in-law. Regarding Jiang Hai's words, Qi still believed it. She had to say that her 2 younger sisters were really willing to go all out. They knew that these were their sisters, yet they said that they would seduce them just like that, because Jiang Hai didn't know about their existence. And it was also before she confessed. Qi really couldn't say anything. What? Leave Jiang Hai? If she wanted to leave, then she would have left long ago. Why would she wait until now? Now that Jiang Hai had made things clear, there was definitely anger and hatred. But there was also a trace of inexplicable self-blame. If she had thought things through earlier, then they might not have had anything to do with it. So after explaining, Qi pushed Jiang Hai. She pushed Jiang Hai 3 times. It was needless to say how strong Jiang Hai's physical fitness was. He had already done it 3 times, and Qi didn't know how many times. In the end, she completed it with her consciousness, and then fell asleep. In the end, she didn't sleep for long before she woke up again. It seemed that her idea of giving birth to Jiang Hai's baby was becoming more and more firm. In the past, she could be considered to be at ease. If it came, she would come. If it didn't, she would wait. Now she was a little impatient. In her world, the company was very important, and Jiang Hai was also very important. She didn't want to give up either of them, so naturally, she had to find a way to balance it. Just like in ancient times, a mother was valued by her son. This was the reality. Your body won't be able to stand it. Stroking Qi slender waist, Jiang Hai said to her somewhat helplessly, I know my body, even if it really can't stand it. Don't you know how to cure diseases? When the time comes, you can cure me. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Qi also leaned down and said to Jiang Hai with a smile, Hearing her words, Jiang Hai also sighed helplessly. Sometimes she was so stubborn. The stubborn Jiang Hai also had no way. The only way was, "Don't blame me for making you unable to get out of bed." Looking at Qili, Jiang Hai turned over and pressed her under his body again. "I couldn't ask for more." Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Qili also smiled and said with a serious face, "Sometimes the war started so inexplicably. During the whole day of the 4th day of the new year, Jiang Hai almost didn't go out of the house. He only came out for lunch at noon. After resting for about 2 hours, he was pulled into the room by Qili. Once such a woman made up her mind, it was really quite deceptive. At least, Jiang Hai felt that his 8 times physical fitness was somewhat unable to withstand it. A silent night. The life of the 5th day of the new year was almost the same. Early in the morning, Jiang Hai went to set off a string of firecrackers. This was the 5th day of the new year. The customs of the new year were different from place to place, and the customs were also different. In some places, the new year was not considered over until the 15th day. In fact, Jiang Hai also had such a saying when he was very young. After the 15th day, the new year was considered over. In some of the rural areas where they were, it was often on the 16th or 17th day of the new year that some vendors and the like would set up their stalls. However, the pace of life nowadays was so fast that there were very few people who didn't go to work on the 15th day of the new year. Basically, after the 5th day of the new year, which was the so-called 5th day of the new year, people would go to work on the 6th and 7th day of the new year. Jiang Hai was also like this in the past. Therefore, after setting off the firecrackers on the 5th day of the new year was considered over. Jiang Hai prepared to take a plane to the imperial capital tomorrow, and then return to Winthrop the day after tomorrow. He would then call the CIA to confirm that his personnel were going to the South Pole. This matter had been delayed for so long, Jiang Hai had to go and take a look at it no matter what. After knowing that Jiang Hai would be leaving tomorrow, Qili did not pester Jiang Hai. Instead, she accompanied Jiang Hai to go shopping. They went to buy Bing City's local specialties. Red sausages, dried sausages, barbecued pork, etc. Jiang Hai would buy these things every time he came back. This was also one of his hobbies. After all, Winthrop did not have such flavors. On the evening of the 5th, Feng Yinchen returned. Qijie and Qiye did not want Qili to know about their relationship with Jiang Hai. That was why they decided to leave later. But they did not know that Qili already knew about it. Ai Xiaoxi had also sent a letter. She would take the train to the imperial capital tomorrow and meet up with Jiang Hai and the rest. They would take the plane the day after tomorrow. As for Qili, she was going to stay at home for a while. She still had to go back and teach Qijie and Qiye a lesson. These two actually dared to seduce their brother-in-law behind her back. In her opinion, they should be punished. Time passed quickly. Of course, on the evening of the 5th day of the new year, Jiang Hai also belonged to Qili. No one had any objections to this. After all, it was very rare for Qili and Jiang Hai to meet. Of course, in the evening, Qili also gave Jiang Hai a day off and asked him to comfort Du Ning. This time, it was Du Ning who accompanied Qili. The next morning, in addition to Qili, Du Ning, and Qijie and Qiye who stayed at home, Jiang Hai took a group of girls to the airport in the minibus he rented. When they arrived at the airport, there was nothing much to say. They changed their boarding passes and took the VIP channel. Even if it was just Bing City flying to the imperial capital, Jiang Hai still took the first-class cabin. After arriving at the imperial capital, they found a good hotel to stay in. In the afternoon, Ai Xiaoxi came. This time, not only did she come alone, but she also brought the crab sauce made by her mother for Jiang Hai. Jiang Hai could only laugh at this. But this was also a good start, wasn't it? At least, the mothers of these girls seemed to like him very much. When Jiang Hai was preparing to return to Winthrop tomorrow, Qili also returned to her home. Of course, she came with a mission. Qijie and Qiye were directly tortured by her. They also knew that their plan had been exposed. While they secretly scolded Jiang Hai for not keeping his mouth shut, they could only sign a lot of humiliating contracts. Naturally, it was not a problem to cede territory and pay compensation. Originally, Qi Jia had always been dissatisfied with Qi Li because they were only half-blood related. But now, she had to succumb to Qi Li's abuse of power. At least before she got pregnant with Qi Li, she had no ability to resist Qi Li. In this regard, Qi was originally afraid of this big sister, and now, she was even more afraid. She could actually guess that they were related to Jiang Hai just because of an anklet. This big sister was really terrifying. However, although the three sisters made a big fuss, they did not alarm the old lady. For them, it was not that Jiang Hai could not be divided equally, but they were more restrained by their identities as sisters. Now that there was a leader, things were not so troublesome. Jiang Hai did not know how Qi Li would deal with her two sisters. He only knew that after sleeping in the capital, he got on a plane the next day and returned to the United States. As usual, he first went to New York, then returned to Winthrop. After more than 10 hours of flight, the plane also landed at the New York airport. As soon as Jiang Hai landed, the CIB called. They knew Jiang Hai's surveillance like the back of their hand. Jiang Hai did not care about this. If they wanted to monitor him, they could monitor him. He did not care about letting these people know where he went, because sometimes, it was safer to let them know than not. Just like in the ancient Huaxia, the emperor often liked to give some ministers servants or beauties. Did you really think that those people were just servants and women? They also carried heavy responsibilities. And these ministers would be very happy to have such a person in their house, because this would let the emperor feel at ease and know that they had no intention of rebelling. Everyone had shortcomings: greed, lust, and desire for power. These shortcomings could be tolerated by those in power, but he had to know what these threats were for. Although Jiang Hai was not a minister, letting these people in the United States know what he was doing was also a reassuring move. Of course, they could only monitor him. If they dared to cross the line, then Jiang Hai was not to be trifled with. Chapter 940. Mr. Jiang, hello, do you still remember me? The phone was picked up, and a familiar voice sounded from the other side of the phone. Last time, this person spoke in English, but this time, he spoke in Chinese, although there was a strong smell of plastic. Louis Cazada, if I remember correctly. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai said indifferently. Hearing that Jiang Hai still remembered him, Louis Cazada also smiled. Mr. Jiang, I learned Chinese especially for you. How are you? Are you having fun in Huaxia? After hearing Jiang Hai's words, Louis Cazada also smiled and said, but these guys really know how to be familiar with each other. They talk like old friends, but fortunately, Jiang Hai also knows that this guy is not a good person. It's okay. I don't know why Mr. Cazada is calling me this time. So Jiang Hai answered him indifferently. Hearing that Jiang Hai did not fall for his trick, Louis Cazada did not feel embarrassed. As an employee like him, it is not the first time that he has been slapped in the face by his target. His skin is extremely thick. Hearing that Jiang Hai did not give him any face, he did not care and continued to ask Jiang Hai, well, we recently agreed to go to Antarctica. Do you still want to go? Of course, but I just came back today, so I haven't decided where to go yet. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai also said seriously, in March, after the flowers bloomed in the warm spring, Jiang Hai will start to get busy. Although Jiang Hai started to buy seaweed seeds and fish fry after he started selling fish last year, the quantity was not too large. In March, Jiang Hai will buy the largest quantity of fish. Unlike the average American, Americans didn't like to raise fish because it would increase the cost of doing so. Therefore, more than 70% of the American seafood is naturally raised and then caught by long-distance fishing boats. In their view, whether it is the Atlantic Ocean or the Pacific Ocean, it is their backyard. If they want to fish, they can fish. Over the years, fishing resources have gradually decreased, but they do not care. Instead, they continue to increase the number of fishing boats. But Jiang Hai is different. He comes from Huaxia, and Huaxia has been raising fish fry for a long time. It is almost the opposite of the United States. 70% of the fish in Huaxia is raised. There is no other way. There are too many people in Huaxia. So Jiang Hai also has the habit of raising fish. Only he knows how much he sold his fish last year. This year Jiang Hai is going to raise some better fish. Originally, Jiang Hai's fish was not for ordinary people to eat. American red fish sells for $40 per kilogram, which is almost $20 per pound. This price is already more expensive than the retail salmon. The retail price of salmon raised in the United States is about $8.99 per pound. The wild ones are $14.99 per pound, and the skinned ones are $7.99 per pound. The small tuna is $13.99 per pound, and the live American red fish can only be sold for $8.99 per pound. Jiang Hai sells them for nearly 3 times the price, which is indeed a bit of a scam. So this year, in order to occupy more high-end markets, Jiang Hai and Edward Anderson have studied together. This year they can raise white pomfret and small tuna. No matter how small the tuna is, it is still more valuable than cod and red fish. This is a matter of bloodline. Originally, tuna could not be farmed, because there is no way to raise this kind of fish in net cages. It runs around all year round, but with the increase of Jiang Hai's spiritual energy, he has a way to make these fish live in his fish farm. They will not leave even in winter, just like the tuna he brought in. At present, the population of tuna in Jiang Hai's manor is quite considerable. Although Jiang Hai did not count carefully, Edward Anderson once counted. There are about 1,200 bluefin tuna in Jiang Hai's manor. Jiang Hai knew that there were not so many bluefin tuna in the beginning. After he expanded his fish farm, many of them swam over from Cape Cod. What Edward Anderson did not know was that many of these fish have already laid eggs. According to Jiang Hai's estimation, he will have at least 30,000 bluefin tuna next year. Of course, this is not the number of mature fish. Even if Jiang Hai's spiritual energy is very powerful, it can only increase the speed of growth. At most, it can only make these fish grow faster. It can't make them grow as fast as they used to in 20 years. However, it is estimated that when they grow to 20 years, it will take about 4 or 5 years. In addition, Jiang Hai's manor had a lot of yellowfin, long-finned, big-eyed, and masu tunas. There were more than 10,000 yellowfin tunas, among which there were more than 3,000 adult tunas, and more than 30,000 long-finned tunas, masu tunas, and big-eyed tunas. It was precisely because of these tunas that they didn't leave Jiang Hai's fishing grounds during winter. That's why Edward Anderson dared to propose to breed tuna. Otherwise, he would not dare to mention this. Jiang Hai's fish farm does not have a purse seine. If tuna are bred, these fish will run away, and they will have no place to catch them. Of course, at first, they will only breed small tuna. They are not prepared to breed bluefin, yellowfin, masu, big-eye, longfin, etc. Instead, they will breed a small tuna first, that is, bonito. In addition, Jiang Hai is also preparing to breed white pomfrets next year. White pomfrets are actually found in China, the Atlantic Ocean, and the Pacific Ocean. They are divided into freshwater white pomfrets and saltwater white pomfrets. Jiang Hai is raising saltwater white pomfrets. This kind of fish, whether domestically or abroad, is actually not cheap. In the United States, a frozen white pomfret sells for $13.99 US. According to Jiang Hai's black-hearted mentality, it is normal for this fish to sell for $50 US per kilogram. As for bonito, he and Edward Anderson set the price at $80 US per kilogram. Breeding more valuable fish and taking a more high-end route is Jiang Hai's intention. Since you are still planning to go, then in the next few days, you may have to think about it. Do you want to go with us? Or do you want to go by yourself? And we will meet at the border? Hearing Jiang Hai say that he will definitely go, Louis Quezada also said seriously, "Let me hear what you have in mind first." Hearing Louis Quezada's words, Jiang Hai also asked him, "We currently have 2 ways to go to the South Pole. One is Tierra del Fuego in Argentina, and the other is Cape Horn in Chile. Of course, if you want to take a boat directly from Mexico, you can also go there. It mainly depends on your schedule." Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Louis Quezada also smiled and said. Hearing what he said, Jiang Hai looked at Azalina. He is not too involved in these things. These things are mainly for Azalina to study. Tierra del Fuego. Seeing Jiang Hai looking at her, Azalina also nodded and said seriously, in fact, if they want to do their own research, they will also have to go through Tierra del Fuego. Mainly because the political situation in Argentina is more stable, and the relationship between Argentina and the United States is better. The South American countries have always been the backyard of the United States. In South America, Cuba was the only country that was not on good terms with the United States. This country was also a nationalistic country, similar to Soviet Russia and China. However, due to the division between Soviet Russia and China, some countries in South America started to have other ideas. Among them, Brazil's biggest importer was China, but they were more inclined towards the Western world. However, the Western world did not only refer to the United States. Other than that, there were some countries that were more or less ambiguous. They had made it clear that they were the underlings of the United States. There were only two countries in South America, Puerto Rico and Argentina. Compared to going to Chile, Tierra del Fuego in Argentina is naturally more worthy of Jiang Hai and the others with you. Visas. Tierra del Fuego. Hearing Azalina's words, Jiang Hai also said to Luis Quezada, okay, I will arrange a ship in Tierra del Fuego. If you need anything, you can find me at any time. Hearing that Jiang Hai has confirmed the route, Luis Quezada also smiled and hung up the phone. The next step is to study the itinerary. Since we have confirmed Tierra del Fuego, we also have to study how to get there, and who will be going. After hanging up the phone, Jiang Hai looked at Azalina and asked her, he must go this time, but who will be going? This needs to be considered. This time, Jie will definitely not go. After all, the U.S. military will be among the people who will go, and it is impossible for his home to be unguarded. Plus, there will be people to protect Zhengjin, so the number of people may be somewhat insufficient. This time, Rallis Carter will stay behind to protect Zhengjin. Beliak, Valentina, and Ale Sarah will be guarding the house. Me Wallace Shelley, Galena Vasilkaya, Belle Lester, and Knerson Peters will go together. Oh yes, little Huang and Xiaobai will also go. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Azalina explained the list they had prepared. Since Jiang Hai confirmed that he will go to Antarctica, Azalina and the others have been studying who will go and who will stay at home. Because there will be people from the CIB this time, they have to be careful. So the people who will go are all experts. In addition, this time they are going to Antarctica, unlike the last time when they were just going to find a cave. So they need someone to carry their things, luggage, and logistics. They can't rely on the CIB people. Therefore, Knerson Peters, Jiang Hai's bodyguard in name, also played a role. As for Belle Lester, it is inevitable that there will be a sniper in this team. Listening to Azalina's arrangement, Jiang Hai also nodded. Everyone has their own specialties. Jiang Hai does not understand these things very well, so he will let someone who does. Chapter 941. Boss, you're back. After leaving New York's airport, Jiang Hai came to the parking lot. At this time, Edward Anderson and Robbins Garcia were waiting there. They naturally came to pick up Jiang Hai and the others. Because Jiang Hai and the others came back with more people, they specially rented a minibus. Jiang Hai was also thinking about whether to buy a luxury bus in the manor in the future. After all, there were more and more people in his manor. Thank you for your hard work. Did anything happen recently? Jiang Hai came over and patted the two on the shoulder and asked them with a smile. It's only been a few days. What can happen? Haha, we are all veterans. We are very familiar with these things. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Robbins Garcia and Edward Anderson also laughed and said, we'll talk about it when we get back. I may not stay long this time and will leave again. This time, I will be gone for almost a month. Hearing their words, Jiang Hai said as he walked to the car. Hearing that Jiang Hai was going to leave, although they didn't know what Jiang Hai was going to do, they still had to report. The car slowly moved in the direction of Jiang Hai's manor in Winthrop. Jiang Hai was also in the car, listening to Robbins Garcia and Edward Anderson's introduction. In fact, at the beginning of January, Jiang Hai left the manor and went to Washington for a meeting. So basically, after the Christmas holiday, Jiang Hai's men began to work on their own. Because it was still in a world of ice and snow, Jiang Hai's manor could do very little. At the vineyard, all they had to do was to clear the snow. The same went for the vegetable fields. The work of the cows was the same every day. They had to be let out for a run every day. Even in winter, the cows couldn't have too much fat on their bodies. Of course, they couldn't have too much muscle either. That wouldn't work either. Everyone knew that good beef had to have marbling patterns, and the so-called pattern was the fat. The other places were the lean meat of the beef, which represented the muscle. Therefore, when raising cattle, especially good cattle, completely lean meat was not enough, and it was also not enough to let the cattle have fatty meat. It must have a certain proportion of fatty meat, and then let the lean meat wrap around the fatty meat. Only then could the beef be sold at a high price. Of course, there were some places, such as tendons and sirloin, where there was only lean meat and fat, and there was no way. It was like training the brain into muscle. It was unscientific, and no one could do anything about it. Robbins Garcia and the others were considered old cowboys, so they were very good at this. With Jiang Hai's high annual salary, they naturally wouldn't waste their time. They would let the cattle out every day, and let them run for a period of time. Because in winter, the cattle couldn't eat grass and exercise at the same time, so the exercise time must be controlled well. As for Edward Anderson, he still sailed out to fish. Jiang Hai and the others didn't use the car to transport the fresh fish they caught every day to Boston. Instead, Jiang Hai directly bought a spot at Boston Dock. Yes, bought, not rented. Jiang Hai was so rich and overbearing. Every evening, everyone would go out to sea. After a night of fishing, the next morning, the fish would be delivered to the dock. Naturally, there would be people from PRA Walton, as well as the purchasing staff from the high-end Western restaurant that Jiang Hai had signed a contract with. They would purchase the fish according to the amount they had originally signed. It had to be admitted that in the beginning, when Jiang Hai's fish were caught, although many people saw it, not many bought it. But now, just like beef, it was completely in short supply. Almost all high-end Western restaurants required Jiang Hai's seafood. Now, high-end Western restaurants in Boston, New York, and other northeastern corners would have a special menu, just like the one Jiang Hai ate in Washington. The seafood from the mysterious Sea of Winthrop was nothing to say. It tasted good. It was so easy to completely crush with strength. Just like in the farming novels that Jiang Hai read before, a cabbage was delicious. No matter how much it was sold, people would buy it. Of course, Jiang Hai wasn't that magical, but his seafood was delicious. No matter what kind of seafood it was, the meat was quite chewy, which meant that there was enough exercise. Generally, the meat of farmed fish was very loose, but Jiang Hai's fish was the same as wild fish. Moreover, it had the special sweetness of sea fish, and this sweetness was particularly strong. The taste was quite good. There were also some busybodies who suspected that Jiang Hai's fish tasted so good because of something added in it. After the results came out, these people were dumbfounded. Not only did Jiang Hai's fish have no problems, but the content of elements that were beneficial to the human body was also far more than other sea fish. Of course, in the eyes of some people, even if there was no problem, it was still a problem, but more people could accept it. People can't make everyone like them. Jiang Hai was also such a person. Therefore, he never tried to please anyone. No matter what people said, he would still sell it. If you have the guts, then don't buy it. That's how he did it. Of course, in addition to the fish and beef, Jiang Hai's sheep, pigs, and the like settled down in Jiang Hai's manor with these animals. Whether it was eating or drinking, these creatures had undergone some changes due to the abundance of spiritual energy. At least in terms of meat quality, it was much better than when they first arrived. Jiang Hai's German donkey, Nanjing yellow chicken, Jiangxiang pig, Yijimkin sheep, etc. The current taste can be said to be quite overbearing. Not to mention in the United States, even in China, you can't eat such delicious food. Jiang Hai was most willing to eat donkey meat. After sauce, it was sliced and eaten. The taste was really good. Mutton was basically eaten in the pot. Chicken and pigs were not important. There were many things that could be cooked. Boss, do you still remember the fry you brought from Huaxia? After briefly introducing the situation in the manner and confirming that there were no problems, Edward Anderson suddenly changed the topic and asked Jiang Hai. Of course I remember. Hearing Edward Anderson's words, Jiang Hai's eyebrows couldn't help but twitch. He remembered that there were two kinds of fish that he brought back from the country, the long-jawed fish, which was the so-called Yangtze River swordfish, and the large yellow croaker, which was the so-called large yellow flower. Although the introduced fish were all farmed, Jiang Hai believed that it wouldn't be a problem to sell them as wild fish. Moreover, these things Jiang Hai didn't sell them wholesale. He directly picked them up, frozen them, or chilled them, and directly transported them to his restaurant in the imperial capital to be sold. The price, however much he wanted, was how much. It was that simple. There was also a kind of Chinese bahaba fish. There were only 8 of them in total. This was specially made to prevent inbreeding. But the number was still not many, and it was not time to catch them yet. Recently, of the 2 kinds of fish you raised, the small one has been swimming back to lay eggs. I remember that this kind of fish is a single spawning fish. I think it's almost time to start fishing. Hearing Jiang Hai say that he still remembers, Edward Anderson also said with a smile, "Oh, can we start fishing so soon?" Hearing his words, Jiang Hai's eyes couldn't help but light up, and he said with some surprise, "Single spawning means that this kind of fish can only lay eggs once in its life. Most migrations ended up like this. For example, the chumha and the whitebait would grow up in the river when they were young. When they grew up, they would swim around in the sea before returning to the river to lay their eggs. After laying their eggs, they would die. The same is true for the long-jawed fish, the Yangtze River swordfish, which is why it is so difficult to raise. Although Jiang Hai has the nourishment of spiritual energy and can make these fish not die after laying eggs, there is no way to make them live for too long. It has been more than a year since Jiang Hai got 100,000 long-jawed fish, and it's almost time. If some fish have begun to migrate, then Jiang Hai also has to be prepared. About March or April every year, these fish will migrate in large numbers and lay eggs. Calculating the time, it should be about time. After these fish have finished laying eggs, Jiang Hai has to catch these fish as soon as possible, then ice or quick freeze them, and transport them to China. This is a race against time. Jiang Hai has been waiting for this for a long time. As for the new generation, there was no need to worry. With the nourishment of the spiritual energy and the protection of Jiang Hai's freshwater river, these small fishes could grow quickly. A single long-jawed centipede could produce 30,000 eggs. According to Jiang Hai's conservative estimate, with the spiritual energy and his own intentional range, out of 100,000 long-jawed centipedes, at least 10,000, and at most 30,000 would be able to produce eggs. If one centipede produced 30,000 eggs, then only 1/3 would be able to mature. That was to say, Jiang Hai would have at least 100 million long-jawed centipedes by next year. Considering the price of the fish in China, it isn't excessive for Jiang Hai to sell it for $800 per caddy, is it? In a restaurant, it isn't excessive for $1,000 per caddy, is it? Let's take Jiang Hai's 3 tails as an example. How much is 100 million? 24 billion. And it's still US dollars. Of course, it can't be calculated like this. The reason why this thing is valuable is because it is valuable in small quantities. Jiang Hai entering the domestic market in such a large quantity will definitely have an impact. Naturally, Jiang Hai is also included in this calculation. Even if it is sold at half the price, it is still $12 billion. No matter how much it was discounted, it would still be $6 billion or $3 billion. What is really valuable? This is it. $100 per caddy, equivalent to about 600 yuan, is still worth 3 billion. Of course, that is for next year, or even the year after. For now, even if Jiang Hai can get 80,000 of the 100,000 long-jawed fish, it is guaranteed to be 24,000 caddies, which is nearly $20 million. Jiang Hai is a little poor recently, so he won't be soft-hearted about this money. Everything will be done after I come back from Antarctica. Thinking of the wealth that will come, Jiang Hai narrowed his eyes. Chapter 942. After returning to Winthrop, Jiang Hai didn't stay at home for long, as it was still covered in ice and snow. To be exact, he was in a rush. So when he returned to Winthrop, he had a small meeting at home. He made some arrangements for the operation of the manor when he was not around for a while. After everything was settled, Jiang Hai found Belle Lester and Knerson Peters and told them that he wanted them to accompany him. Naturally, there was no problem with the two of them. Knerson Peters could leave at any time, but Belle Lester, Jiang Hai gave him a 3-day leave. He would leave after his leave was over. At the same time, Jiang Hai and the rest had to prepare the equipment for the trip to Antarctica. Yes, Jiang Hai had to prepare the equipment himself. You could not expect the CIA to prepare the equipment for Jiang Hai. The first thing they needed was something to keep them warm. Although Jiang Hai was born in Bing City and now lived in Winthrop, anyone who had been to Antarctica would know that it was not on the same level. Not to mention Antarctica, even the North Pole could not withstand it. As the coldest place in the world, the southern district was divided into two areas, the coastal area and the inland area. During the warm season in the coastal area, the average temperature was around 0 degrees Celsius to minus 20 degrees Celsius. The average temperature in the inland area was minus 35 degrees Celsius to minus 20 degrees Celsius. That is to say, it was minus 20 degrees Celsius during the day and minus 35 degrees Celsius at night. In fact, it was still acceptable. That was why they could go there during the warm season. During the cold season, the coastal area was minus 30 degrees Celsius to minus 5 degrees Celsius, and the inland area was minus 70 degrees Celsius to minus 40 degrees Celsius. This was the reason why even the most advanced technology in the world could not stay outdoors in Antarctica for a long time. Of course, there was another more important reason. In fact, the warm season in Antarctica lasted for 5 months. It started in November and ended in March of the following year. A total of 5 months. But why could they only go to Antarctica in January and February every year? It was because of the wind there. There were hurricanes in Antarctica all the time. There were 300 days of gale days. And there were only 2 months where the wind was not that strong. Of course, the gale days mentioned here were different from the gale days in the normal sense. In normal times, the so-called gale days were only force 5 or force 6 winds. But in the South Pole, there were no force 5 or force 6 winds at all. The smallest wind was force 8, which was nearly 20 meters per second. It was only during these 2 months that the wind was level 8. Apart from these 2 months, the wind was level 10 and above. At its strongest, it could even reach 100 meters per second. It was impossible to calculate what level the wind was at. When Jiang Hai was in school, the most powerful wind he knew was level 12. But in fact, above level 12, there were levels 13, 14, 15, 16, and 17. The highest level of wind defined by humans was level 17, with a wind speed of more than 61.3 meters per second. Obviously, between 61 and 100, there was still a long way to go. Therefore, even if it was summer in Antarctica, Jiang Hai still had to take good measures to protect himself from the cold. Level 8 wind, coupled with a temperature of minus 30 degrees Celsius. Just thinking about it made him feel so excited. Secondly, there was the problem of weapons. Ordinary weapons were naturally useless in Antarctica. When the wind blew, snowflakes would float. If snow entered the gun, it would instantly freeze the things inside. It would be useless even if it was oiled. So in Antarctica, it was necessary to use sealed guns made of special materials. Although the power would be much lower, at least it could be used. Of course, regular weapons were still prepared. After all, some places were not so cold. Thirdly, there were problems related to orientation. There were no landmarks in Antarctica, and compasses were not very useful. Just satellite positioning and so on. You had to pray that the satellite was watching you. So, identifying directions in Antarctica was also very important. Of course, there were many other things. But at present, These were the most important. Jiang Hai had to solve these things while Belle was resting. Azalina was responsible for getting the guns. Wallace Shelley was responsible for orientation. And Jiang Hai had to buy clothes and so on. Keeping warm is extremely important in Antarctica. Fortunately, there is nothing in this world that can't be done with money, especially when it comes to clothes. Jiang Hai easily bought the world's best winter clothes through the American Express Company. This winter clothes was jointly developed by Huaxia and Soviet Russia. Jiang Hai did not know what high-tech material was used, but it could release the sweat inside and keep the inside dry. At the same time, the wind and cold from outside could not enter at all. Huaxia and Soviet Russia's Antarctic scientific research stations used it. In addition to thin clothes made in the United States and a sweater inside, it was enough to withstand the Antarctic weather. People like Jiang Hai, who lived in the north, knew very well. In cold weather, it was useless to wear too many layers because too many layers were too thick. In fact, it was not warm because your body heat could not be transmitted to that distance. Therefore, people often wore extra layers, but it was still very cold because the outer layer of clothes could not keep you warm. You should wear warm clothes inside, and then wear a down jacket or mink fur outside. That would be quite warm. Therefore, Jiang Hai only bought such clothes. He bought a total of 8 sets. Himself, Azalina, Wallace Shelley, Galina Vasilkaya, Belle Lester, and Connors Peterson. A total of 6 people, 1 set each. There were also 2 spare sets, one for men and one for women. He also bought special vests for Goldie and Xiaobai. These 2 dogs would also play an important role in the future. After his clothes were delivered, he chartered a plane and prepared to fly directly to the capital of Argentina, Buenos Aires. Therefore, although Jiang Hai was responsible for a lot of things, in fact, he was the fastest to finish the battle. In 2 days, Jiang Hai was already done. On the morning of the 3rd day, Wallace Shelley walked out of the room with some positioning equipment. This was considered to have solved the 3rd problem. At night, Azalina came back with a box of weapons. These weapons were all made of rubber. Of course, they could be made of other things, but Jiang Hai did not recognize them. However, they felt very rubbery to the touch. Jiang Hai tested them. The power of the weapons was only about half of the original. The pistols could only shoot 30 meters away, and the rifles had an effective range of less than 100 meters. However, this was not easy. Belle had his own sniper rifle. He had said this before he left, so Jiang Hai did not have to worry about it. Azalina was also happy to do so. Otherwise, where could she find a sniper rifle made of such special materials? That would be a little too much for him to do. Looking at the equipment, Jiang Hai took a pistol, a rifle, and his own Desert Eagle. He thought for a while, and took out the composite bow he had bought a long time ago when he went into the mountains. This thing might be useful in the future. After everything was settled, Jiang Hai also told the current leaders of the family, namely Feng Yinshan and Ai Xiaoxi, to pay attention to the wind and grass in the vicinity. He also told Biliak, Valentina, and Alarcera, the 3 people who stayed at home, to remember to protect them and run away if anything went wrong. After the manor was gone, he could still rebuild it. But if they were gone, Jiang Hai would feel heartache for a long time. After everyone had been warned, Jiang Hai on the 4th day, Belle Lester came back. He seemed to be a little weak. It seemed that he did not stay at home obediently for the past 3 days. However, it did not matter. Jiang Hai did not care about the shortcomings of his subordinates. Having no shortcomings was the most terrible thing. After the 6 of them were equipped, Alarcera drove Jiang Hai's MVP to the airport in Boston. When they arrived at the airport, Jiang Hai and the others boarded the plane through a special passage. Although the plane did not belong to him, he was the one who booked it. However, he was the one who booked the plane, so there was nothing wrong with bringing the dog and weapons on the plane. As for Argentina, the CIB had already informed them. With a command from the command tower, the plane carrying Jiang Hai and the others also flew into the sky. At the same time, Alarcera also followed Jiang Hai's request. After they took off, he called Luis Casado. The CIB had to pick him up in Argentina. After confirming, Alarcera drove back to Jiang Hai's manor. At the same time, he also hung a Do Not Disturb sign at the door. These days, Zhonghai was not in the manor. Everything in the manor had stopped operating. Except for selling beef and fish as usual, the manor did not accept any visitors. Those who came to visit at this time did not have good intentions. In fact, this was indeed the case. Less than half an hour after Zhonghai's plane flew, many people already knew that Zhonghai had gone to the South Pole. However, these people did not act rashly, because Zhonghai had not yet entered the South Pole. There was no signal. Now he was flying in the sky. Now, he was only going to Argentina. If something happened to his house at this time, he could come back at any time. Valentina, who was stationed at the house, also found that there were many people around Zhonghai's house. In just a short time, the number of people had almost doubled. These people included Americans, Europeans, blacks, and of course Asians. They could also be sure that these Asians came from at least 3 countries: Huaxia, South Korea, and Japan. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.